Hey Lucy, can you hear me?
Yes.
How's it going,
Well,
Giggler?
uh, it's been it's been uh uh how's it going?
Been tough?
Well, it's been a mixed bag.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning. I think earlier this week you said that there was something, there was some family stuff going on. So I hope that's going all right. It's tough. Yeah, um, it was. Yeah, you're probably that kind of stuff can definitely wear you out. So I totally understand. So that's yeah.
I've
Um,
mentioned family stuff. Sorry. When?
yeah, you had some family stuff going on, I think, or I forget exactly, um, but yeah, I hope whatever's going on. Hopefully you're feeling. Hopefully everybody's doing fine.
Wait, wait. I'll try to. I'll do my best now to put you on the screen. I'll make myself big. Would you like to see me?
Yeah, I mean you could. Yeah, I'm just showing my camera because I'm just showing my camera. I mean you can if you need to show the game, you can put me in the corner or something. No
Oh,
big deal.
I won't be
Yeah.
playing. We'll be focusing on talking to you.
Cool. Awesome.
I just have to. Mm, uh, this? No. Apologies. I have to add new window capture. Boy talking of thing. Uh, thank you.
And I'm gonna pop chat out from my on my side. There
Mm,
we go.
Discord? No? Oh, here you go. I'm going to deactivate the camera. And I'm going to activate the camera. Wait, how do I do this? Turn on.
Yeah,
How
I'm
do
not streaming right now, so I can see you though. There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Um, so if you could tell, even though I'm pretty sure everybody knows you, if you could tell us briefly about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Ben, appreciate you having me on again. This is the second time. And so yeah, I'm BoyMeetsMini. I come from a lot of these lefty circles. I was in Basha's community. I'm still kind of am.
But you
But
said you
I've
had a little bit of misgivings with Bosch.
just some disagreements, and yeah, it's just I'm sort of a little more independent as a lefty.
Is it
I also yeah.
is it okay to ask what the disagreements are?
Mainly, mainly it's what I'm disappointed in him with is, and again, he does good work in terms of like electoralism. I think what he's doing is vital to that, but especially with progressive victory. But yeah, I find that a lot of times his when he starts to talk about countries outside of the West, when he did a Pakistan segment recently, and he basically spent an hour researching it, but he's not that well informed about the
You
global
should
South
you
countries.
should
I
research
yeah
outside of stream.
yeah, and like prepare a little better and not like talk
Yeah.
out of and not not try to pull like not try to make assumptions about something you know nothing about. So
Talk out of
he
your
got a
head.
lot of things wrong about Pakistan's politics recently, and of course, I mean I pretty much forgiven him for his bad take on asexuality. I think he corrected himself later about it. So
What was your
yeah.
take on asexual? Are you asexual?
Yes, yes. So, yeah. So just, I guess,
What was the
as
take?
far as
I
I'm probably going into this too quickly, but yeah. So I am Demi, actually. So, and my pronouns are he, him. And so my problem is he said that all those terms, asexuality, aromanticism, and all the terms under that are meaningless. Basically, that was his take because he's like, well, a bunch of people say they're ace, but then they yeah, they
and
bonk other
then
people. And
I'm
like he
sorry.
was
And then what?
basically his point was, I've like he said that ace means nothing because there are ace people who have sex, and it's like what?
But
It's a spectrum. I don't think he understands that it's a spectrum.
but if
Yeah,
if someone says they don't like sweets, that doesn't mean that they will
they
never eat
never
a
eat
sweet
them.
in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, so this purity is he was very purity testy in his take of asexuality, which I think he recanted it later because it was something he said off the cuff during a stream in response to a chatter. So it wasn't like a segment he planned. It wasn't anything he posted on his YouTube channel. It was in the VOD. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
boy.
that's those are my only misgivings with the guy. I would love to talk to him about South Asia, kind of like we're talking now.
Yeah,
I'd like to go on his show, but getting on a platform that big is
not easy. You
for
could try
it, yeah.
easing him into the idea by
Hmm.
shooting him an email. He responds more to
Yeah.
emails than people assume. Actually,
Okay.
he
I
he
might give it a shot,
he did
but yeah.
respond to my emails at least.
Hmm.
I'm
Cool.
pretty
I'll
sure
I'll have to.
myself.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a try, or maybe reach out to Demon Mama.
In fact,
Uh.
we were in the
Yeah.
middle of arranging a talk when the whole uh, accident happened, and then the
Mm.
meeting just ended up being folded into the charity stream.
Oof. Well, I'm sorry. I hope you're all recovering from that, and
No, it's
yeah.
that's good now. But but as I understand, asexuality is it's like you do have sex, but it's just never going to be as much a priority as to many other people. You can have it, but you won't miss it if you don't. Sort of. That's how I understand it.
Correct, and also it's obviously different from abstinence. Abstinence is a
Yes.
choice. It's a moral choice that you make, or personal choice. Often a moral choice that is
You don't
misguided.
seek it out. Was what I mean. Sort of.
Yeah, I don't naturally seek it out. I'm not.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not as like turned on. I'm not as. And so that's where terms like demisexual come in, where it's specific to where I only feel that intimacy with someone when I am in a strong relationship with them. Like if the relationship isn't that strong and it's not, it doesn't click with me.
Right.
Whereas like the expectation for a lot of cis men is that they are more sexually leading, right? Whereas
Yes.
I'm not. So,
Well, I
but yeah,
think that's okay. But you're not aromantic, right? From what I'm
no,
hearing.
I am. I don't know. I haven't done enough exploration of my romanticism just because I haven't been dating, so I don't know. Um, I I don't know if I really can't say whether I'm bi or hetero or what. I can't really say. I'm definitely more. I would say historically I've been more hetero romantic. But yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I
what I
haven't
mean
explored
by
enough.
aromantic is like you do sort of lean into the how to describe it,
Yeah.
romantic feelings, which to
Yeah,
me
I
are a
don't know.
bit
I haven't
separate
explored.
from sexuality and sex.
Right, because it's a split model, right? Split model, split attraction model. Yeah, I haven't really explored that, so I don't have a definite answer yet on where I am on the aromantic sort of spectrum. But yeah, we'll find. I guess I'm in the process of
Sooner
finding
or
out.
later.
But yeah, sorry, I didn't want to sidetrack too much.
No, that's
But
okay. I
yeah,
think that's
don't want to overstay my intro, but yeah. So I am somebody who is from all of our we were sort of in the same communities, and so
And you're
and I
still
think
in
last
Demon Mamas, right? And
of course, why not? She's awesome, and so yeah, I'm still in like the Discord, and I show up sometimes in the site chat. So, but yeah, I so the way basically. So for those who, I guess for to finish my intro, I wanted to come on today to talk about India and specifically Prime Minister Modi and sort of his party and the all the nationalism that's going on there because I think you recently had a couple of people come in supporting and praising him,
one
and
in
I wanted to
particular,
counter that.
who I
Yeah, I
think
don't know
they
if they're here,
said
but
they're not here right now, but they said
okay, no
something
worries.
along the lines of excluding some people is necessary for not excluding maybe that treating some groups worse is for the greater good, which I don't think ever works well. But what
Yeah,
else
so I
do you?
wanted to get sorry. I wanted to get into sort of like refuting those points and actually like talking about how much of a disaster Modi's administration and also like his party are to the country and to the region. So, but yeah, I guess to preface this, I am saying all these things as a person from India, and in fact, I am from northern India, which and that'll come up later. That's important for later because there is an aspect of Hindutva nationalism that basically says North Indians are better than other people, other ethnic groups in India. It's sort of this Aryan kind of thing, basically, sort of the Aryan race type stuff.
Have
Unfortunately,
you
that they
sort of
believe in. Yeah.
so
So
have you been affected by this sort of? You know, how was this sort of present in your life when you lived in the north?
I was born in northern India, so specifically the state of Uttar Pradesh, where most of my family lives. They're mostly in the state of Uttar Pradesh. If you don't know, if you look at a map, Uttar Pradesh is where the Taj Mahal is. That's one of the famous landmarks, and of
Yes.
course, you've probably seen all the temples on the Ganges River in Varanasi. That's where the famous temples are. So it is India's largest state by population, 240 million people. It's a lot of people.
It is big.
Uh, yeah, it is basically
And it
this.
has that densest city in the, if I remember correct, the one that Hen visited.
Yes, yes, and yeah, and so it's a high population. So yeah, but the way so I came to the U.S. with my parents when I was very young. I was 4 years old. I have visited back to the country, back home to my family many times though, and I keep up with what's going on there. And so my family comes from a sort of minority religious group. We are Protestant Christians. Now, of course. I have my own misgivings with Protestant Christianity. My family is conservative. That said, Christians of all kinds, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, evangelical, they are all, along with other religious minorities like Muslims, are being marginalized by the Indian government and have been so for years.
So that
And
includes
Modi has
you.
exacerbated it. Yes, and that includes me. And so one thing that happens a lot there is when Christians try to do things, try to have, say, like a community event or like around Easter or Christmas time. For example, in the city of Lucknow, which is the capital of UP, and that's where my family mainly lives. There used to be an Easter parade. There used to be a
Hmm.
lot more sort of religious like processions and parades for all the different faiths, Christian,
All
Muslim,
right.
Hindu, like
That
Sikh,
does
everybody lived
Easter.
together.
Does Easter and what does Easter? It might be a strange question, but what
Hmm.
did the celebration include? Does it include all the things like the eggs and
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, all
painting
of
the
that.
eggs?
Yep. And of course, over there, we've developed our own. We've actually like adopted a lot of the local culture too, like of making dishes like biryani, which is mainly sort of like a Mughal era dish that was from like the
Right.
Muslim empires that ruled the place. So we've kind of borrowed from them.
That
But
sort of makes sense
yeah,
to add a local flair to
yeah.
a celebration.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the government of UP has done several things to sort of clamp down on Christians. So they will often they will often stop. The city will often prohibit Christian processions. They will also do this for Muslims on their holidays like Eid and and Ramadan. Uh, and so, unfortunately, a lot of our celebrations get, we're not allowed to celebrate in the community, right? Because the government, steps on it and says you can't have this procession.
What about
And yeah.
regular weekly things like the Christian and the Muslim equivalent of celebrating the
So there have been, and recently, India unfortunately is one of the things that makes the news from India often in Western media is the communal violence. And when I say communal, I don't mean like from a communist perspective. When in India, when we use the word communal, we mean sort of. We what we basically mean is sort of sectarian violence, but at a sort of local community level.
Okay.
Um, and so what ends up happening is extremist groups, and there obviously are Muslim extremist groups. There are even Christian extremist groups that are very, very fundamentalist over there that I'm starting to monitor. But
Oh,
they pale in comparison to the Hindu nationalist
that's probably
groups. Yeah.
because I'm only guessing. That's probably because they feel emboldened by the government itself.
Basically, yeah, it is in reaction to the government's marginalizing of people of minority religion, right? So that's a lot of where it comes from, and but that said,
Oh,
yeah,
you froze a bit. Your
oh,
camera
did I?
froze.
Am I good now? Sorry, it's probably OBS
Your
molding.
your camera is freezing.
Oh
You're
no.
frozen.
All right, we go without the camera then,
Oh
for now.
no.
Rip camera.
Uh,
It's all good. I think Discord just can you still hear me though?
I can hear you.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, I'll see if I can get it working. But yeah, basically, what happens a lot is and this is where sort of Modi ties into everything, right? So for everybody who's probably heard, Modi is, of course, India's prime minister. He has been there since 2014, and he was previously. Before that, he was the chief minister, or so in India, we have the states, right? The provinces. And each state has a chief minister, and they are basically the governor of that state. So Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat state, which Gujarat is in the northwest of India, basically. And so because that Modi is a Gujarati person, so that's where he comes from, and so he was the chief minister of Gujarat in the early 2000s, like 2001, for until I think '08,
A long career.
2008. Yeah. And so during that time, and if you read, there's actually, I think, a BBC documentary about it, and I think DW also did one, Deutsche Welle.
Oh,
There's documentaries about when Modi was chief minister of Gujarat, where he basically worked with militant Hindutva nationalist organizations to start religious riots. So the most egregious case of which was in 2002 in the riots in the city of Godra. So in Godra, what happened? There was a train that crashed and caught fire. And what happened was Modi, and along with and organizations like the RSS, who are like the militant wing of the Hindutva nationalist of politics, basically, they're basically brown shirts. And so, but they're very, very organized. I mean, there's millions of members, unfortunately, across the
millions.
country. Yes, we're talking about 5 or 6 million active members in the RSS.
Oh,
So it is one of the world's biggest fascist movements, unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're kind of sort of like the Nazi youth brigades, right? They're very very similar to that.
SA?
They sort of, I'm sorry.
SA?
I guess kind of. I'm not like they're kind of like that. Basically, what they do is under the guise of this sort of religious ethno nationalism, they have these. They train young. They basically kind of what they do is they have these training centers all over the country, and what they do is they train these young people, especially young boys. It's mainly young men. There are very few women, if at all, in the RSS.
That's not
It's very
surprising.
masculine, yeah, and so they will train them from young age, from like from the it's basically from the age of 10 and up basically, and they will like give them military training and
So
obviously
it's
indoctrinate them.
almost like
Uh,
the.
yeah.
Maybe that's a bit of a weird comparison. So, but it's
Mhm.
a little bit like the Hitaryungan thing.
Very similar, yeah. And so what they'll do is, they'll train them, indoctrinate them. They'll have them, and the RSS, looks official because they build themselves as this place where young men can build discipline and national pride and serve their nation.
National
Uh,
pride.
mhm.
But that's a bit
Yeah.
that's a bit strange in this case because national pride in you have to ask what does that mean in a country like India? No,
Yeah, and that's where like this idea of the Indian nation sort of this is where like it's kind of a flawed idea. And so
I
but
agree.
I guess I guess before we get into all that stuff, right? So Modi uh was the chief minister of Gujarat, right? And so there was this train fire that happened in 2002. And it was a train accident and a fire and many people died. But the RSS, along with Modi and his party, which is the BJP, which BJP, if you translate what their name is, basically means Indian People's Party. Yes, it's very LARPy. So in Hindi, they call it the Bharatiya Janata Party, Indian People's Party, word for word.
But also again the question arises: who are the Indian people?
Yeah, and so the RSS, and this is where sort of the Hindutva ideology comes in of who they consider Indian, and so yeah, but the when this train accident happened, the RSS manufactured the story, and they and of course some of the conservative news outlets at the time were pushing the story that Muslim extremists had bombed the train when that's not what had happened. Even the railway operator confirmed, Indian Railways confirmed it was an accident. It was
Right.
not a perpetrated attack. So and then so anyways, what ended up happening is this the RSS started to go into Muslim neighborhoods in majority areas in Godhra and in other Gujarati cities,
Because it was framed as
Ahmedabad
a
and
Muslim terrorist attack, yes?
yes. And so they would go into those areas, they would go in like these huge processions. They would have, bats, swords, guns. They would brandish them in front of mosques. They would put pigs in front of mosques, pretty disrespectful to Muslims.
Yeah.
Basically blatant Islamophobia. And then, of course, the riots started where the RSS would start burning Muslims' homes, their businesses. They would, they'd set fire to buildings. They would take children from families. They would, just rough, they would go into a house and basically hold people hostage. And so this is where the Gujarat riots of 2002 started. And after many investigations, it has been confirmed that Modi was behind a lot of this orchestration of these riots. And the reason he
Who
was
conducted the
is
investigation? Sorry to interrupt.
well, of course, the Supreme Court, the High Court of India, the Supreme Court, but also there was international investigations as well from the UN, and so that's where a lot of this came out of. It was mainly from the UN, but also in conjunction with the Supreme Court of India.
I'm asking
Um,
because even though this has happened and this was concluded, the person did end up basically in charge later on.
Unfortunately, yeah, and there was nothing that really stopped him from getting into power. And so basically, if you wonder how is Modi involved in all this RSS stuff, well, if you read Modi's life story, he and his his biography, not autobiography, his autobiography has a lot of gaps in it. But if his actual, when you read about his actual life, he wanted to join the Indian Army, right? And he didn't qualify.
Oh,
So
why not?
then, I think it was some medical thing. If I'm remembering correctly, yeah, it was some medical reason. That's why. So, but he, he had this. He came from a, not a well-off family. They were, his family were sort of lower middle income, and so he wanted to serve his country in some way. And so then he found the RSS. And so when he was really young, he joined the RSS, trained up with them, worked up the ranks, and he basically became like an organizing officer within the RSS. And so eventually, later in life, he became top brass at the RSS, and this was in the 1970s. And then what happened in 1980? A new political party formed out of the RSS, and guess what? It's the BJP. The BJP emerged out of the RSS's main leadership and top brass in 1980, and they have been gaining ground ever since in the subcontinent as far as like power. So that's where Modi is like he is basically the RSS. You know how Joe Biden says I am the Democratic Party? It's as if Modi said I am the RSS, you know? Now, if you all don't know what RSS stands for, again, it's long Sanskrit Hindi words. I'm going to type it in chat what RSS stands for. And I'm going to
In DM?
translate it. No, in inside chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
Yeah, so that's if you see inside chat, that's what RSS stands for. Basically, I've obviously Romanized the language, but Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. Obviously, I grew up speaking Hindi and Urdu in my house at home with my family, so I can say it properly or semi properly. But
Semi
Rashtriya
properly.
Swayam. maybe I'm being too hard on myself. But yeah,
Okay.
the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. And so what this means, if you sort of if you interpret what it means, basically Rashtriya means basically like Rashtra means sort of empire. That's basically what it means. Empire or or kingdom or whatever. That's what Rashtra means. So Rashtriya means they are for the kingdom.
Or the
Swayamsevak,
Empire.
yeah, and then Swayamsevak, basically what that means that comes from Hinduism. So that basically, if I remember correctly, Swayamsevak is basically sort of what they can sort of upper caste Hindu tradition and Vedic tradition and stuff like that. That's basically what that word encompasses. So Swayamsevak. So basically like sort of
Swine.
tradition.
Swine Sevak.
Swayamsevak, you nailed it.
Swine Sevak.
And then sung, basically that word basically means like organization. So I'm reading it here. Yeah, that basically basically means like uh, it's not so much family. It's more like how do we call it? Um, how would
Clan.
I translate the word sung?
Pack.
Um, Kind of, sort of. Organization. Sangha is more like organization. Swayamsevak is basically like sort of volunteer. So it basically translated as national volunteer organization. So Rashtriya means nation or empire, and then Swayamsevak is volunteer. Sangh is organization. So organization or family, basically. And again, these words come from Sanskrit. They're very Sanskritized words, if you will. So now, what informs all of this? So there's an ideology that came up during the time of British colonialism, and obviously it was there from before as well. There's an ideology called Hindutva. So before I get into this, basically, we have to separate Hinduism from Hindutva. We have to understand the difference. It is kind of like saying Christianity versus Christian nationalism, or Islam
Ah,
versus jihadism.
yes.
That's basically the analogy to see the it's basically how to look at how to look at this. This is how I explain it to people. And so yeah, so Hindutva is different from Hinduism. So Hinduism, right? We all know it's a polytheistic set of beliefs. It's considered a single religion, but really, Hinduism is syncretized, right? What that means is, you know, throughout South Asian history, throughout the subcontinent, there have been these disparate beliefs and these different gods created by all these different cultures, and because India is very ethnically and linguistically diverse. So all these different, ethnic groups and cultures, came up with these beliefs, and of course, over time, through empires and conquest, these beliefs got syncretized and institutionalized. Right, it became
Mm,
the umbrella of Hinduism. But initially they started out as disparate, sort of beliefs.
right.
If you go back to so that's why when you go to India and you go to Hindu temples throughout the country, you will actually see stark differences. When you go down south versus when you're up north or in the northeast or wherever. So there's stark differences between them. There's different gods and goddesses they worship. So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, and also, there's unique holidays. There's a lot of regional, cultural, religious holidays. So maybe in the south, like in Tamil Nadu, they will celebrate, a certain holiday, but then up north they don't celebrate it. Even though it's all Hindu religious holidays, it's regional. So, anyways, that's what Hinduism is. It's sort of over time, sort of this syncretized collection of beliefs from the subcontinent. Hindutva co-opts Hinduism the same way jihadism co-opts Islamic belief. The Hindutva basically co-opts it and says we need to form a nation under one religion, Hinduism, right? Or what they
Yes.
regard as Hinduism. We need to unify all Hindus under the same belief, so basically monotheizing Hinduism. And then they say that all people who live in the subcontinent are of the, sort of Indo-Aryan or Aryan race. And then they also say things like, okay, you've probably heard of colorism in South Asia, where people use those face lightening creams.
Yes. Well,
Basically, I don't
mm,
want to go. Yeah, sorry, go ahead if you had a
oh,
question.
because it might be a bit different than
Hmm.
the, how should I call it? Calling it a phenomenon would be weird.
Hmm.
The practice, I guess. Okay, I will call it practice. Then
Hmm.
practice in Southeastern Asia, wherein people try to avoid getting tanned,
Hmm.
like in Vietnam, where people will go swimming in full body suits. But in Vietnam, it's more associated that the more like being tanned was associated with going out to do manual labor. So people try to be more sort of, uh, I guess, higher social class by avoiding tanning.
Yeah, and so that is kind of, and that plays into, and that
Is that
is
similar
basically
or
it's similar in South Asia, and I say South Asia because I want to include Pakistan, Nepal, and all these, Sri Lanka and Mauritius and all these other countries where
mm,
South Asian people are dominant. It's not just India, we also have to talk about Bangladesh and Myanmar, right? So and these other countries, but yeah, basically that's it plays into caste and it also plays into class. So let me explain that quickly. Crash course on caste. So we all know what class is, right? It's mainly economic, right? Economic, occupational.
oh, I know
Caste.
about.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, because I'm sure this is different, but I guess in the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth, you had the estate. You know, you had the
Mhm.
Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth was organized by a state, and the sense of patriotism was sort of derived from for people from belonging to living on a certain territory, which was the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth, and
Mhm.
belonging to an estate, which was the nobles, the peasants, the people living in the cities, and Jewish people actually were their own estate within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. If that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that's sort of how they organize things. Um, that's sort of, I guess that's sort of how they organize things. I think the difference with caste is that it had very strong sort of religious basis, particularly in early Hinduism.
Right.
So basically, you have to remember that in ancient India, in ancient, the ancient time, I don't want to call it India because India didn't exist before the Brits came. They sort of had this idea of a unified India. So in the subcontinent, in the prior empires that existed, basically the caste system was imposed by people who were more noble and wealthier,
Mm.
uh, and and they base it on this myth. Okay, so just to get your heads around this, so basically, this system has been co-opted and used by various empires ruling the subcontinent for thousands of years. From the ancient empires to the Mughals, the British enforced the caste system because that was their method of control or one method of
Apparently, I'm
control.
so
Yeah.
sorry to once again.
Yep. No worries.
Apparently, the system was on its way to being lessened, at least before the British Empire. Is that true? Is that accurate?
Yes, to the Mughals' credit, yes, they were trying to lessen it, but then of course, when the colonialism arrived, from the Brits, the Portuguese, and the French, they saw that as an opportunity to, sort of control and structure the colony. So that's where sort of caste sort of came roaring back roaring back in the subcontinent was because of colonialism, colluding with the upper caste people who wanted elite positions within the colonial government, right?
Right.
So that's
That's
where
interesting.
yeah,
Very.
yeah.
Could be worth making also having a whole discussion about how there's this sort of, in a way, collaboration enforces or rather enforced colonialism.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but the difference with caste is that so where it came from, it was a religious basis, and basically there it comes from in Hinduism. There is this goddess named Manu. Okay, so Manu, Manu
Mano.
in Romanized, but Manu was
Mano.
goddess. Manu is a goddess, and so or actually, yeah, sorry, Manu,
Mano.
yeah. Yeah. Actually, hang on. Let me make because I'm a Christian. I'm not like the most familiar with Hindu mythology,
Right, that's okay.
and where it came from. So basically, in Hinduism, there is a text. There's an ancient Hindu text that is still maintained today. It's called the Manu Smriti, and I'm going to paste that in chat as well. In fact, I have the Wikipedia article for it. That's the sort of easiest way to sort of understand it. Basically, it's a text from the first to third century BC. So, or no, first to third century AD. So you're talking, 100 to 300 AD. And it was originally written in Sanskrit. And so basically, it is sort of it is a legal text that has religious basis, which already is troublesome, and it basically co-opts Hinduism and says we need to have this structure in society and we need to base it on all this stuff. So what it ends up doing is it classifies people basically by occupation and family lineage. And one of the things in Hinduism that people, if you're not familiar with the religion, is that family lineage is very closely tied to the temple. So your family, because again, they tie everything into astrology, basically. So your family, like if I was part of a Hindu family in India, our family register would be in the temple. Like the priest would have all the family records from dating back hundreds of years. And so basically, your family's, sort of prestige and status and stuff is tied into the religion, is tied into the temple. And so this is where sort of this idea of the caste came from, where they basically say that, well, we need social classes because that is the source of our dharma. Dharma, that word,
It's
basically is dharam means faith. That's like the source of,
it's it
it's
might be a bit of a
yeah.
silly thing for me to ask, but
No worries. All the
because
questions.
people usually treat the word the astrology as pretty universal, and it's
Mhm.
not exactly like that. For example, Vietnamese astrology is quite different from the one that the West knows. So could you maybe describe the astrology that you're talking about a bit?
Again, I'm not a Hindu, so I will admit that. But in Indian astrology, um, so Hindu, well, not Indian, but Hindu astrology, I should correct myself, which basically comes from the Vedas. So the Vedas are, sort of the early sort of, ancient Hindu texts that are still followed today and recited in many temples. The Vedas, that's where a lot of the astrology comes from, specifically from the Vedas. So it's called Vedic astrology, and basically, and what's weird is the Vedas basically consider like the patterns of the stars, like basically they associate that with like health conditions. They associate that with
Is it like
how nature works and stuff.
is it
So
like
basically, it's a
constellations?
science. Yes, so they associate constellations with and star patterns and comets and shooting stars and those kind of events with they basically associate that with things that happen in our earthly world, right? Whether it's sickness, health issues, and this is sort of where the chakras come from, and when in yoga when they teach about chakras and tantric meditation and stuff like that, that's where it all comes from. Is this stuff? Um,
Right. I
so
know that in
yeah,
Vietnam you have animals and elements tied to the animals. I think I
yeah,
have
in
a
in
wooden rat
and that's
in
probably similar to like the zodiac, right? The Chinese, like the traditional Chinese zodiac, or like I guess it's Confucian in I guess tradition. Um, but yeah, in
but
Vedic,
is it
sorry, go ahead.
about being born under a certain constellation or
Yes, there is that, and that actually factors into caste as well, because if you're born under a certain constellation, basically that because they believe in reincarnation, right? So you're born a human being now, but then you reincarnate as some other
interestingly
being.
enough,
Yeah.
Judaism from what I understand also
Mhm.
believes in reincarnation.
That wouldn't surprise me. I think Hinduism is not unique in its belief of reincarnation, but
Right.
this is how the astrology incorporates into that. And so if you're born
Stars.
under those stars, basically it sort of determines the course of your life. And so this is sort of the root of casteism, is where like it's based on this Vedic astrology, and of course you can co-opt that and say, hey, if you're poor in this life, maybe you were born under a bad,
Then
under the
maybe you'll
sign
be
of a,
rich in the next life.
who knows, right? But they say that in this life, this is where you belong. This is your lot. This is all you get.
Right.
And so that's basically the root of caste.
And how about
Um,
health? How does that sort of
So they will. So what they'll do is they will. There are, because obviously there's a Hindu calendar, and it is basically it's sort of a lunar slash solar calendar. It's not precisely one or the other, but it is based on those sort of lunar and solar events. Yeah, basically. And this is where you've probably heard the sort of when the Nazis co-opt Kali Yuga and those kind of ideas. This is kind of where it comes from, basically, because in Vedic astrology you have time periods or intervals called yugas, basically. Yeah, so in again in and so basically they would and over time, people would associate like, oh, this happened at this time when the moon was in this phase, therefore because the moon is in this phase, that's when disease strikes, or that's when storms come,
Oh,
or that's when earthquakes happen. It's really, and of course they associate that with herbal medicine, Ayurveda. And Ayurveda was, people thought that like these herbs had magical qualities, and of course this was before modern science. So
yes, of course.
but what's crazy,
Hmm.
and this is one of the brain rot things about India. Less so in the south, but you can still do it in northern India, particularly. You can actually get an MD, like a doctor's degree,
Ah,
you can get a doctor's degree in Ayurvedic medicine. I'm not joking. It's very common. It's silly.
well, I
So
mean, there's
yeah, yeah.
also you can become an MD and branch out into acupuncture.
Yeah, so it's very, again, it's similar to that. And so again, this
But
stuff gets
I
really,
believe
yes, yeah,
I believe that to branch out into
mm,
acupuncture, you do also have
mhm,
to practice regular medicine, as in study regular medicine as well. I
mhm,
believe it's like my friend's mom finished
mm,
medical university in Vietnam. I'm pretty sure she had to go through regular medicine
mm.
before uh, learning also the acupuncture part.
Yeah, I wonder, does acupuncture have, I guess it has some astrological like basis, right? Is that
Well, it
kind of where it came
has.
from?
It's more like with the. It's tied to the energy within. You know,
Mm,
you those almost like in Naruto. You target those points in theory.
mm.
Like
Y-
the only thing that has been actually demonstrated and not decisively is that it has certain pain relieving properties.
Maybe, maybe there's like muscle relaxation and circulation benefits to it, but yeah,
But it's not
it goes too far.
exactly. Yes.
As many of these things do. I mean, yoga probably is, or some yoga is probably good for flexibility, mobility.
Yeah,
Uh, you
I
know,
would
you
say
know,
so. Yeah.
but some of the things you do in yoga are actually terrible for your spine, and of course, you don't want to end up paralyzed. So, yeah, it's not all good. And of course, a lot of the sort of medicine, alternative medicine, is really unhealthy and often unregulated. There are many cases where, Ayurvedic medicine is laced with chemical like lead or whatever, arsenic. There are
Meridians. That
many
are the
cases.
points.
Yeah.
Meridians.
Yep. So actually, let me get into. I looked up some more just to sort of like jog my memory on Vedic astrology since I'm a Christian. But basically, instead of so much animal signs, it's more about the celestial bodies. So they talk about the sun, moon, the planets, and so we in Sanskrit there are names for different places at that time what they knew of the solar system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the sun is Surya, the moon is Chandra, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Chand in Hindi and Urdu means moon, right? Chand.
Mm-hmm.
Buddha is Mercury, Shukra is Venus, Mangala is Mars, Brahaspati or is Jupiter. So Brahaspati in old Sanskrit basically means guru or like teacher. So they consider Jupiter like the guru of planets. So yeah, and also the
What
one
about
thing
the
that's
planet
interesting.
that
Oh,
stopped
good.
being a planet? I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
Pluto, they I didn't register, I guess, back then, so it's not in there.
Okay.
So they are also Pluto haters.
So the one
Um,
thing that the most in sort of you started saying that the thing that the most and I interrupted.
no, no, no. Finish your thought.
No, it's done. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Yeah. So, and also, what's kind of interesting, you probably heard recently that India's space agency landed a scientific rover on the southern pole of the moon. Well, it turns out that in Vedic astrology, they actually have unique names for the north and south poles of the moon, and I
Oh,
guess this has to do again with the phases and all the phases of the moon. So Rahu is the north pole, Ketu is the south pole. So what's kind of interesting is a lot of these Hindutva nationalists in India will say India successfully landed its rover on the south pole of the moon, and they sort of then they bring all the Vedic mythology into it, even though the scientists are like, I don't care. It's like and of course the Indian government will push it as well. That this is like astrologically like a good thing, and will bring prosperity to the country. It's like, oh God, yeah. So they get into all this stuff again. We're sort of in a rabbit hole here with Vedic astrology, but that's basically kind of what a lot of caste and a lot of these sort of divisions come from. It is based on this type of astrology, reincarnation, and of course, associating heavenly bodies and stars and constellations with that, and what you're born under, right? And so that's where the caste system comes from. Is you are born under that sign. That's a sign you
you
live under
are
your whole life, and that's your
assigned
lot.
a sign.
Yeah, basically. Unfortunately, because of the way that ancient empires, and of course, you go up to the Mughal era, and of course the British Empire, those societies were very feudal in the way they operated, right? And today, even India as a country is very feudal in the way it operates. So,
Feudal
because
in
of
the
that,
sense that you have, for the lack of a better description, masters and serfs.
basically, yeah. So masters, serfs, you have a lot of hierarchy. Obviously, in ancient times, it was the emperor's hold, right? The emperor owned everything and everybody in their hold. And so you're not too dissimilar from European monarchs, really, to be honest.
Well, again,
But
the
yeah,
Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was sort of a bizarre exception, since the
correct.
king
Yeah, yeah.
was elected and basically almost had no power.
Yeah, and there's like I know throughout time, like the English monarchy kind of evolved in that respect, but it was still a divine rite of passage at the end of the day.
Right, in the
But
Commonwealth, the
certainly,
king was elected,
right,
so
right.
the
So
the
that
power was
was
held by the nobles. They were the real leading force in the country. They were the citizens de facto, since they voted to elect their sort of head of the country. That's a bit of a
exactly, yeah, and that's kind of unique that there was like this early form of democracy in like Renaissance Europe. Or I guess was it Renaissance or also medieval period?
it started in the middle 1500s, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And unlike some people like to say, which we will get into today, it was not an empire, it was a union.
Right. It was like this what Commonwealth, but it was like this, I guess, was it like a union of like kingdoms,
It
or
was a
I guess I
union between the Kingdom of Poland and the Great Duchy of Lithuania. And it's also important
I see.
to keep stressing, because people don't seem to understand this very well, that the Kingdom of Poland is not the same as the nation state of Poland, and the Great Duchy
Mm.
of Lithuania was not the same as the nation state Lithuania. It's a
The
totally
current.
different. Those are totally different concepts.
I see. I see. Yeah, I need to read more into that. I'd like to probably. I know you cover it a lot, but I'll have to watch your segments on the Commonwealth and sort of how it differed
Yes,
from
because
most European monarchies. Because that's pretty cool.
there's a very dangerous tendency to take national identity and nationalism and try to project it back to history, to sort of try to build history of a country as something that not only inevitably led to the creation of the nation state, but also that actually the national identity was there from evermore, and that the nations existed forever, which it's completely not true. Sorry.
Exactly, and that's kind of one of the problems with Hindutva nationalism is they co-opt all of this stuff from history, and they basically do revisionism in
Mm.
order to construct this sort of ethno-national religious identity and lump everyone into it, and then of course classify everyone underneath that, right?
Yes,
So,
that's a
sorry,
very
there's
yes. There's a comment.
yeah, Lanitas in site chat says, do they even take Uranus and Neptune? No, because those were not discovered yet at that time. Because Saturn has been identified by astronomers, for millennia. I guess because they were able to, the devices of the time could see that far, and they were able to identify Saturn. But beyond that, yeah, they couldn't see the outer gas giants and of course Pluto, which were discovered later by like Galileo, and then of course by who was it? Clyde Tombaugh, I think, discovered Pluto in 1930. So yeah, they only knew up to Saturn back in those days. So yeah, just to answer that question, yes, that's correct. They only knew up to Saturn back then. But so basically all this stuff, caste, which again is derived from Vedic astrology, and is very and is sort of very limiting of a human being. It takes away agency from people, right? You can already see how this type of belief and system, takes agency away from people, and doesn't allow them to be who they want to be. They have to, and because it has this deep religious basis, and religion is so ingrained in people in India. It's not just Sunday morning go to church. It's your daily life. In
Well,
many Hindu. Sorry, God.
I know, no. I just wanted to say that in a way, I guess Judaism is similar because it's not a
Mm,
religion of faith, but it's a religion of deed, if that makes sense. So there are many
mm.
things that are done regularly, many things that are performed. It's more of a thing you do perform than an act of I believe in X, if that makes sense. I guess
That
maybe
makes
that
sense, right? Yeah. Whereas
right,
like Islam and Christianity are much more sort of on belief. Yeah.
right. That's true.
That makes sense. Yes, and and that sort of that deep ingraining in various cultures throughout South Asia. Go to the south and the Dravidian cultures, like in the Tamil culture, or the or the Andhra culture, and then of course you go up north and you have sort of all the various cultures of the north. So you have Kashmiri people in Kashmir. You have Rajasthani people. You have obviously Punjabi and Saraiki people, and of course, um, the people who are oppressed the most under these systems are, generally speaking, very low caste people who work very menial jobs like cleaning sewage and cleaning type jobs, basically, because the upper caste people think, oh, I don't want to be touching filth. Let them touch filth, let them suffer
Uh,
because they were born. They are of that caste, and that's all they get.
mm,
And so unfortunately, and so people ask me, why is there so much trash on the streets of India? And that's not an offensive question, but like, truly, Indian cities are not well kept. And one of the reasons that is the case is because upper caste people, whether it's through personal actions like just throwing trash anywhere, there is no really there's for those upper caste people, there really is no concept of sort of keeping, of sort of stewardship for the environment.
yes.
And so,
Sometimes
oh, my
people
camera
just
froze again.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Can't. Did my camera freeze or no?
No,
We
it
good. We
didn't.
good.
No, we're good.
Okay. Okay. I
We're
thought it
okay.
froze for a sec.
It
All
didn't.
right.
Like sometimes people just don't understand the effect they have on the environment around them. You know, when I went with my best friend, his name is Tuan. You know, to Vietnam.
Mm.
He took me to Vietnam. Um, we went on one of those trips when we went to very nice uh, areas full of nature and stuff like that. And the taxi
That's
driver
awesome.
that sort of drove us like had a can of drink. It was like I was like,
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and
that's
unfortunately,
sort
that's
of in the
the
long
yeah.
run ruining the environment will sort of affect your job in the long run since people come to see it and you drive them,
I
you know.
guess. Well, in India, it's more again. It's more that oh, we're the upper caste. We don't touch that filth. We leave it be for the lower
Oh, well, the
people.
taxi
The lower
driver
caste.
said,
Yeah,
well, it'll be probably cleaned anyway, but
yeah.
that shouldn't be the point, you know?
And that shows you how segregated society has become over there, right? It's especially with in South Asia with caste, and I guess in Vietnam similarly. Maybe their culture has been affected by this sort of like astrology and sort of stratifying society,
Well,
right?
the government has been doing, I will say, because I've been to
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam twice, the government has been making strides to clean certain places up. Like they've even
Mm-hmm.
utilized some technology there with the where there are what like bodies of water that are just you could hear you feel smell coming from
Mm-hmm.
it, you know,
Right.
and the government has been making strides to clean that up to sort of like I know that from one place on my first visit I felt the smell and on my second visit I did not and I even just saw sort of machine sort of the fishing out the things from bodies of water when we sort of so I think that's a good thing for the
Mhm.
to take this initiative but I do think that it's a really harmful attitude to be like what you described. I'm not touching this.
Mhm.
This is for the. I guess something like this exists within countries where people say, I don't really want to touch this, so we can have people come from abroad and do the filthy work for us, preferably for a small pay. You
Yep,
know?
and I've seen it many times, visiting back home in Uttar Pradesh, and even I've been to other parts of India. Like, what we'll often do, we'll fly back home to visit. We
Mm,
stay at my grandfather's house because, he's lived there forever.
yeah,
And, we will leave our big suitcases over there. We'll take our small backpacks and, we'll take a 2 or 3 day trip to some other part of the country. So
yeah.
like, I've been to Goa, I've been to Bengaluru, the big tech city down south. I've been to the mountains in the northern parts of India to do that, and I've noticed throughout the country that this is a prevailing attitude. Now, what's interesting is, specifically, this is with caste. The caste system is much more prevalent still in northern and central parts of the country, as well as up in the northeast, sort of going out toward Myanmar and Bangladesh, right? But when you go to the south, and I think part of the reason is because during the colonial times, when there was resistance to the British, in the south there was this regional movement called the Dravidian movement that started. There were many activists, the main one being Periyar. Periyar is a name you'll often hear in sort of lefty
Periyar.
Indian spaces. Periyar, yeah, I'll put his name in
Periyar.
chat. Periyar. Yeah. Periyar was from Tamil Nadu, so
Periyar.
he was from the south, from the state of Tamil Nadu, and so he was very anti-caste in the same way many other leaders like many other freedom fighters like Ambedkar were. Ambedkar was the guy. B.R. Ambedkar was the framer of the Indian Constitution. In 1947.
Oh. Would you like to know
So
how I would write this in Polish?
go ahead. I can probably write it for you in Tamil, even though Tamil is not my native language.
There you go. So just
um, Let me try to get his
uh,
name.
I just do it probably like this.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get his name in Tamil.
I'll
Tamil script.
probably write it like this instead of the Y in
You know
Polish.
what? I can probably pull up the article in Tamil, and that'll be good. There we go. Is it this? Let me make sure it's because I can't read Tamil for the life of me.
Oh,
And that's the other thing, the language diversity. I can't even read the script. Yeah, this is how it is in Tamil. I don't know if this will show up for everybody. Um,
it showed for me.
there we go.
Very interesting looking writing system.
Yep, I can't read that. I just copy pasted.
Well, If
But
it's
you know,
if it means anything, I cannot read it either.
yeah, which I can read some Hindi script. I've been sort of because I grew up in the again, just a quick background on me. I said I came here when I was young, right? And I sort of visited back, but most of my family is over you know, in India. So I'm over here in the States. I got an American education, hence my accent. But
Hmm.
you know, I can still speak, you know, Hindi and Urdu. मैं Hindi और Urdu बोल सकता हूँ, you know. But squiggly lines. Yeah, Tamil is one of those languages that I am fascinated by and want to learn. But I'm first learning my own sort of language back home, becoming more fluent and becoming more literate in it. Um, uh, and so, yeah. Um, but yeah, Tamil is next on my list for sure because that's the language of in down. That's one of the main languages down south where you know, I do know a lot of people from the South, and that's the reason I want to learn it to communicate better with them. But anyways, but
Right.
Beriyar's concept was basically, and not only his concept, but many other activists of the time was very anti-caste. He wanted to reject the idea of caste because he said that in order for us to have democracy and have freedom and you know and justice and equality in society, we must get rid of caste.
Yes.
Ambedkar was also that way. You know, he is considered the father of the anti-caste movement, which I am also, of course, against the caste system. I imagine pretty much all leftists are against the caste system. Well, unless you talk to tankies, unfortunately in India we have a lot of tanky parties. We have the CPI, the Communist Party of India. They are tankies, and they're basically upper caste people who feign, you know, communism and all this stuff. And really, what they end up doing is they reduce everything to class, and
But
they think caste is not a thing, basically. So they're class
but I
reductionists.
would I would
Yeah.
think that if you look at the theoretical sort
Mhm.
of, you would think that
Mhm.
communists would extra recognize caste as the
Well,
side, as
yeah.
the, you know, in a Marxist sense, as a source of antagonism between people that needs to be eradicated.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the communist parties we have
After
in India,
all,
there's yeah,
like
they're not that. Yeah.
Marx didn't just want to remove class. He wanted to
Mhm.
remove all sources of, you know, well, what's that word that I used just 5 seconds ago?
Yeah, we have to go back to the
Antagonism.
antagonism. Yeah.
Yes,
So
and like,
unfortunately,
yes,
yeah.
like he had in mind, even due to him, from what I'm gathering, even things like specialization in what you do leads
Mm,
to antagonism. So in his mind, a person would
mm,
wake up and do this, maybe later do that, and not be tied to one thing, and in that way, there would be no this sort of labeling, if that makes sense, which also in his mind led to antagonism between forces, between people. And of course,
yeah.
there's the dissolution of the state,
Mhm.
etc., you know?
Yeah, and unfortunately, communist parties in India, so there's two main ones. There's the CPI and then there's the CPI-M. So they add an M on top of it
What's the M
because they're
stand for?
Maoist. So unfortunately, you have MLs on one
Oh,
side and you have MLMs on the other.
MLMs.
So they're not really leftists. The only left parties there are really in India who are like progressive. One is the BSP. So instead of the BJP, we have the BSP, which basically
BS.
means BS. Well, BS, but it in you know, when this is when we romanize the name, basically Bahujan Samaj. I'm gonna write this in the chat as well. Bahujan Samaj Party, the BSP, is basically they are the in up north they are the main Ambedkar aligned party. So they are very anti-caste. They're intersectional, progressive. They basically want social democracy. They're sock dems, but they're pretty cool. I would definitely like electorally at least support them, even if they're not far enough left. But they do a lot of things that you know, to in Ambedkar's words, annihilate the concept of caste. So So yeah, Bahujan Samaj, they're not perfect, but they are one of the most left-leaning parties in India that aren't tankies or Maoists. And then in the south, you have, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm not a Tamil speaker, but in Tamil Nadu, there's another party that is very anti-caste. Well, there's a couple parties, but the main one is they came out of an organization called the Dalit Panthers. So in sort of the 1970s and 80s, there was this Dalit Panther movement,
Mhm.
kind of like modeled after the Black Panthers. They so for those who don't know, the term Dalit means lowest caste. They're like the lowest caste people.
Dalet.
Um, yeah, Dalit, Dalit in English.
D A L
But
A D L A E T.
Yeah, Dali. This is how it's romanized. But basically,
Oh, that's close to
so
the letter Dalet in Hebrew.
I guess so. But in
Like I'm gonna
basically,
write
if
it.
you've
Sorry.
there you go. It's in chat. Um, but so the so when people talk about caste, often they will use the word untouchable. I don't like to use that word because that's what the bigots use. Dalit is more sort of Dalit. That's the Polish letter, I guess. Or is that Polish
No,
or?
it's Hebrew. I'm
Oh, that's the
gonna.
Hebrew. That's the fourth letter, right, of the Hebrew
It's
alphabet.
no. What is it?
Okay.
Oh, I have to bring up alphabet.
Okay.
Alphabet. There we go. It's alphabet
I can look it up.
fifth. Dalet. It looks
Fifth.
like
Okay.
a swirly line in writing. Like,
Interesting.
do you see?
Okay.
Did you look it up?
Yeah, I looked it up. Yeah, in Phoenician it's a sideways triangle which kind of looks like a backwards D in Roman alphabet. But yeah, I can see it. And in Arabic, obviously, there's the D as well. The sound in Arabic. But anyways, so Dalit, yeah, the term untouchable, don't use that. Use the term Dalit because that's a
Dalet.
more empowering term.
Yeah, I've
Now,
heard like.
obvious, yeah.
Sorry. I already heard of that. I have heard that term used on people who I'm not who deal
Hmm?
with the dead.
Yeah, so a lot of times in South Asia, the people who deal with when especially like at funeral processions or in India, what's very common is cremation. Cremation is often the at least among Hindus and Buddhists is the main is the way people uh, that's the common practice is cremation instead of burial. Burial is much more common among Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians. Whereas cremation is common with Buddhists and Hindus. So the Dalit people, lower caste people, they are often the ones who are the ones left to deal with the cremation or burial of bodies. So they are basically given the most like what's considered the most sort of low jobs of society, if you will, right? They're cleaning sewage, just imagine cleaning toilets, dealing with deceased people, and just sort of that's what they are relegated to in the society, and it's not like imposed by the government so much; it's imposed by the economy and also by the culture, right? And sometimes even by state governments as well. But that's like the level of discrimination we have over there
Mm.
still today in throughout the country. This is
And of
still like
course, once you are
prevalent. Yeah.
talent, there's no
Mm.
getting out of that.
Well, there, if you actually abolish the concept of caste, that's the way out, right? So that's what needs to happen, you know, and it
Yeah.
needs to be abolished in every possible institution, not just the government, you know. And capitalism, of course, in India is a very hyper capitalist economy. Most things are privatized, most services are private. There's not much in the government services. And so, unfortunately, you know, it's a hyper capitalist society and it exacerbates the caste
Mm.
divisions, right? So,
Sophie
but I,
says,
yeah, yeah,
do you
sorry.
see? Do you
Then
have
I'll
opened the chat?
yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the chat?
I did, yes. Mark's,
No,
okay,
no, I see
which,
Sophie. I would have thought that dealing with the dead
hmm.
would be considered more of a sacred duty than anything.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and unfortunately, it's sort of because of you know the you know because of the way you know South Asian empires, right, were you know how those empires ran, and they were very feudal, right. They would relegate the upper caste people wanted nothing to do with that, you know. So that's they relegated it to the lower caste people, unfortunately. So yeah,
Because
it
from
is.
what I've heard, it's more like it's considered dirty.
Yeah, basically dirty. You know, there's a high chance for disease potentially, especially, you know, in ancient times there obviously was. You know, because you're handling people who are deceased. Most likely they died from disease or from, you know, or if they were in like, you know, if they were like in war or whatever, they died to injury, right? Um, so yeah, I guess it's that disease aspect that relegated it, and basically, unfortunately, there is also that aspect of sacredness, but it's weaponized, right? So it says, okay, if a Dalit person does this duty, right, you know, of cremating someone and helping them reincarnate, they are doing their duty to the gods, basically. And so that's the, you know, whereas we, you know, the upper caste people are like, at least we don't have to do that. We are, you know, the gods like us more. It's
Mm.
really, really stupid. So yeah, it is it is sacred duty, but in a really, really ugly way.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
I
So,
mean, you
anyways,
would
uh,
think that since a person is sacrificing their everything to do this duty, it would come
mm.
with certain perks, but it
Basically,
doesn't.
no, and those people are kept down. And so this is where sort of the theology falls on itself, right? It falls on its own sword. And it you know, it's not a way for you to uplift yourself in the next reincarnation. So
Mm.
yes, minus, thank you. I appreciate that. Because you know, South Asia is not a region well covered by the Western media or by education, right? You have to like dig for the stuff or ask someone who is from there, who follows this stuff. So,
Thank
anyways,
you.
so we were talking about anti-caste parties, right? So there's the BSP, the Bahujan Samaj up north, and of course in the south, there are several, but the main one, again, came out of the Dalit Panthers, which they were basically like modeled after the Black Panthers. They were this resistance movement, mostly out of Tamil Nadu state, so down in the south. But their name is the VCK, kind of like VCR, but VCK. And you might wonder what the K stands for. In Tamil, the word for party is kachi. Kachi is the word for party.
Kachi.
Uh, kachi, yeah, in
Kachi.
Tamil. And I'm gonna butcher this, but I'm gonna Romanize spell out the name of this party. Okay, get ready.
I'm gonna write it.
I just posted it in chat, so I'm gonna try to say this in the best I can in Tamil pronunciation, kachi. Or I guess yeah, there's your Polish spelling of it.
Kachi.
Yeah, but but in English romanization, that's how it's spelled. So, but the first two letters stand for is VC. So VC, Vidutale,
Hmm.
Chirutegal, Kachi. I probably butchered like one or two syllables, but Virutale, Chirutegal, Kachi. And so what this means, Virutale means liberation, and Chirutegal means panther or like, you know, leopard or like some kind of like predator type animal. So that's what it means. So
Karasu
liberation,
said
panther
something
party.
nice.
Yeah.
Karat said,
Mhm.
Lucy, this is
Yeah.
similar as Burakumin people in Japan, where dealing with
Mm.
dead is looked down upon.
Mm. Yeah, so you could probably, you know, equate equate it to that. Um, but yeah, that's the VCK. They're the sort of main anti-caste party. There's also the DMK, which are the current ruling party, the current majority party in Tamil Nadu.
And
They
that's
are
where our
yeah.
protagonist comes in, I suppose.
No, no, no. The DMK are actually pretty decent. They are social democrats.
Wait, so they're
And
the majority then.
in that state,
I'm
so in that
in
region,
that,
in Tamil
okay,
Nadu.
in that
Yeah.
region. Oh,
So what's
that
kind of
makes
interesting again,
sense.
so when you hear like when I talk about the whole country of India, like the federal government, they are run by the BJP, right? The main the sort of Modi's party, right?
Okay, so
Whereas
the
yeah,
SR, the from that came from the organization, which name I'm
the
blanking out on.
RSS. Yeah,
RSS.
the
Yes.
RSS came up first, throughout the 20th century, and then of course it's still very active today. And then the BJP came about in the 1980s,
Okay.
out of the top brass of the RSS. But in Tamil Nadu specifically, in that state down south, that's where the city of Chennai, or historically called Madras, is. If you've heard the city of Madras,
I've heard that
um,
name.
it's a major, major city in India. It's pretty big. But there is another party, which is the current majority party in Tamil Nadu, which is the DMK, and they are sort of anti-caste social democrats. They're not perfect. I have criticisms of them, but they are generally much more progressive than other parties in other regions throughout India. They are one of the most progressive parties, so they are generally pretty good. So yeah, the DMK is pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I have criticisms, like I said, but I'd rather have them in power right now as like a majority movement than anyone else. So
Right.
so
The
yeah.
biggest
um
center of culture and economy and education in southern India.
yes, yeah, Chennai is the or Madras is, well, the old name is Madras, but the original name of the city is Chennai in the local language, in Tamil.
In
Madras is a
in the
British name.
Polish wiki, you have both names given.
I see, I see. Yeah, because it's the Tamil name, and then of course the anglicized name. Um, so you'd have almost anyone but Modi, and that's what I want to talk about. So when our friend Devesh, I think, I don't want to call them out or put them on the spot, but just to respond to Devesh, if they see this, our friend in Delhi who came into chat last week, supporting Modi. Basically, now we've talked about the caste system and all this stuff, right? What has that culminated in today? Well, Modi, again, he is considered one of the top people in the RSS. He is basically Mr. RSS at this point. Okay, he is the guy. All right, and so obviously there are other key people there. The leadership keeps changing over time, but he is basically the figurehead of the RSS, so to speak, as prime minister of the country and of the dominant sort of Hindutva nationalist party, the BJP. So, unfortunately, since his tenure as prime minister, he came to power in 2014 after defeating the incumbent sort of centrist liberals who were called the Indian National Congress Party, the Congress Party. He defeated them in the campaign, and obviously there was a lot of vote rigging going on, very similar to what Trump wanted to do, but Modi was actually successful in sort of rigging votes, in
No.
going into poorer areas and intimidating people to vote for them. So the
Oh,
BJP, this was their
intimidating
campaign
how?
strategy. So they would go into villages, slums, poorer areas, lower caste areas, religious minority areas, and they would basically intimidate people to vote for the BJP. So the RSS would obviously do this. They would do all this campaigning for BJP candidates, regional and federal. They do this for all elections, whether it's national or parliament or like mayor, governor, that type of thing. So they will, the RSS often does a lot of the campaigning for the BJP and all the canvassing. And so in the canvassing, they sort of like intimidate people to vote for the BJP, or they will play fake populist like Trump did, and they'll stage these huge rallies and lots and lots of people will come. It's like huge crowds of people will come to hear, say, Modi speak, or like one of the regional politicians from the BJP speak, and they will push things like, we will uplift the poor, and all the populist, fake populist stuff. And so this is how they get people to vote for them, and this is how
Right.
Modi won in 2014. Because in 2014, like many countries around the world, the India's economy was in a recession, and there were some like serious structural problems with it, that of course the centrist liberals never resolved. And so this is kind of where he was winning. But
Sorry, which year was that?
2014, so a decade ago, basically, almost a decade ago. And
2014.
so
That's when already we had.
Yeah, and so for the past decade, and for
Mm,
for reference, in India, the prime minister does not really have term limits, which is scary. It's basically the limiting the term of the prime minister. They either have to get voted out, or
die.
it's because get out, die, or there are processes within, because the thing with India is we have a president and a prime minister.
Just
So
like Poland.
it's okay. So Poland has a president and a prime minister. So there is this sort of distribution of power between the two seats, and there's division of power. So I think the president has the ability to determine when the term is up. There's some like parliamentary process involved with it as well. I need
Is
to
there a
read more into
vote
it,
of
but
non-confidence to the prime minister?
yes, it's kind of like Britain's, kind of like the way Britain works. In fact, well, former British colony, not surprised. But yeah, it's kind of like Britain's parliamentary system, in the way they can limit terms. So it is kind of, yeah. And so unfortunately, that is one of the sort of concerns with India as far as like enabling of authoritarianism, right? Modi could take another term. He's not limited to 2 terms. He's already, deep into his
Right.
second term, which is a 5 year, by the way. It's a
I
5 year
think
term.
that's
So yeah,
basically, maybe
yeah.
Karasu would correct me if I'm wrong. That's sort of like
Let me pull up YouTube chat.
Orban. Not sure if Karasu is still here.
Sorry, let me pull up live
Orban with
chat.
his strategies and his endless
Oh hey,
reign.
I saw Dahirumba in YouTube chat. Sorry, I needed to pop out the other chat. There we go.
I'm
Cool.
sorry.
I saw Dahirumba in there. What's up? So yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that's how Modi won basically, and a lot of his party members also won parliament seats, national and state level parliaments, and of course, chief ministers, of the states. A lot of them turned BJP, so it was like a super majority win for the BJP in 2014 because of the frustrations and legitimate frustrations of people with the Liberal Party, right, with the Indian National Congress. So, and so one thing also for Americans, maybe who maybe like, who's this Congress party? So again, in the U.S., we call the Congress, when we use the term Congress in the U.S., we mean House plus Senate. In India, we actually have two levels of parliament. We have the Lok Sabha, who are the elected parliament, and then you have the Rajya Sabha, who are the sort of upper house of parliament, who are not elected; they are appointed. They have like an appointing process basically. So there are two levels of parliament, and then the Congress that we have in India is actually a party. They are sort of a liberal centrist. They're basically the party of Gandhi, if you think of them that way. They're basically
Oh,
Gandhi's party,
well, in
or like Nehru's
Poland you
party.
have the
Yeah,
upper house, the lower house. You have
yeah.
the Sejm and Senate,
I see. So in
which
in Poland. So yeah, I guess that's a good analogy for anybody who's in sort of Central Europe. But yeah, for Americans, I know there's some Americans here. That's basically how it works. So yeah, just like the UK, but
and
yeah,
then you
former
have
Brit colony.
the heads of ministries, you know?
Yes, exactly. And you obviously within the administration, within the prime minister's administration, you have the president, and then you have obviously all your ministers, foreign, home, you name them, right? They're all there. So it's yeah, it's very very British in its structure. So which is cringe. But anyway, I'm just kidding. No, sorry, any Brits in chat, but UK be
It's
cringe, right?
okay. Carasso has confirmed,
Just
yeah,
kidding.
Orban Fidesz had won 2/3, so they're able to change the constitution whenever they want.
Yikes. Yeah, Fidesz really concerns me. And actually, the BJP is a lot like Fidesz, but you're talking on the scale of the most populated nation on Earth. And then one of the most populated, and I think, well, South Asia is the most populated region on Earth, right? So
And
that's
also, I'm
scary,
pretty sure India is
really
looking
scary.
to outpopulate China.
Well, they already have.
They already have. See,
Yeah, obviously
I'm
the
out. I'm out of the loop.
no worries, no worries. Yeah, so India, they're basically they just edge out China, and of course, India has a much higher birth rate than China's does. Even
Yes,
like,
China
well,
is looking
India's yeah,
to drop significantly, and
mm.
India does sound a bit scary.
Yeah, and this is why I talk about it. Not to scaremonger everybody, but to like bring light to a part of the world that you'll never hear about on the Young Turks outside of Modi visiting the United States and addressing Congress. You won't hear
Very,
about what's going on over there. The
yes,
only person the only
very
person in
important.
sort of sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I'm just saying
Um,
that it's very important what you do. In
Thank you,
other
thank you.
words,
And the only person I've seen on mainstream lefty media who has done a good sort of analysis of South Asia and actually seems to get it is Emma from Majority Report. She has cited many times the hypocrisy of Biden and Trump, both Biden and Trump, for cozying up to Modi. And of course, the most recent example being Biden. Him, basically going after those cheap tech jobs over there. That's basically what
hmm,
he that's basically the premise, behind it.
that is the
But
stereotype, isn't it?
yep, unfortunately, and so Modi's entire visit to the United States, by the way, was sort of based upon this expansion of technology in India and sort of how it would be exported to the rest of the world. But of course, what Modi means by that is, hey, let me cozy up and become buddy buddy with all these Silicon Valley companies and Japanese tech firms as well. It's not just American, European and Japanese tech firms as well. Let me cozy up to these people and start operations, in India, and get all the tech grads in my country employed. But what he doesn't realize is that the reason these companies want to go to India is because much lower cost of labor, even compared to China. China's cost of labor is higher than India's, because they want to exploit my people, and the people, all the different peoples of the
Yeah.
subcontinent. And so, yeah, and not only in just like sort of programming, but also in terms of manufacturing. So one of the big pushes by Modi is to increase semiconductor manufacturing. But of course, and one reason for that is that South Asia has a lot of wealth in terms of rare earth minerals and materials required for clean energy tech and for electronics. And
Microchips.
so yeah, microchips. You're talking rare elements, like not just obviously silicon can be made from a lot of materials. It's mainly from sand and from sediments, but you're talking rare materials like copper. Copper is big in India. There's a lot of indium, titanium, gallium. These rare earth elements, and I'm not sure about lithium. I don't think lithium's more Central Asia. I think in Afghanistan, there's a lot of lithium there. But
Afghanistan. Hmm.
yeah, Porky and Chad, exactly. That's what Modi's whole visit to all these Western countries, whether it was the U.S. or if you remember the Australian Prime Minister, the Labour Prime Minister of Australia, cozied up to a fascist and said, "Modi's the boss." I don't know if you remember that clip. Yeah, there was like this whole like I'm not shitting you. I'll send it to you in Discord
Yes,
for
please.
later if you want to watch it. But there
Alright.
is a clip of when Modi visited Australia last year,
Ah,
and he basically was welcomed in by the prime minister and they brought him into the stadium in Sydney as if he was like a pro wrestler. It was wild. It was so crazy. And of course, really saddening to watch. And all of the South Asian people who live in Australia, a bunch of them went to this big event where Modi was speaking, and they were just they drank the Kool-Aid. And unfortunately, a lot of South Asians like me who immigrate outside, we buy into all the Kool-Aid of the Indian government because a lot of us are upper castes, and so my family is also upper caste. But I guess I'm a caste traitor, which is based. So yeah, so yeah, and so
I
we support people like Modi, unfortunately, and we don't question.
That is very sad, considering that
Mhm.
the main topic of the argument that happened in the chat was exactly the fact that there is a lot of marginalization and discrimination happening against people under Modi.
Yes, and actually, if you want me to go into, there's so many cases of it. Like it's like almost every day. So the kinds of things that happen, and this is, I'm gonna, if you want to, if you'd like to put a CW on screen, I'm not gonna show anything, but I'm just gonna describe it.
CW, sorry.
A content warning, because there are a lot of really brutal things happening in India right now, despite what Modi may say that India is becoming a superpower. I
It's
there
always
are
about
yeah.
becoming a superpower, isn't it?
Yeah, there's the classic dictator bragging, the classic dictator humble brag.
Mm.
Um, India's seventh in lithium. Okay, that explains a lot of Modi's push for foreign alliances, lately. That explains it, especially with like Silicon Valley tech companies. Um, but what I was saying is that so in India and throughout South Asia, of course, but particularly in India, there is still a high amount of caste discrimination, gender discrimination, and it is to the point of violence and death. Um, so that's again content warning, trigger warning. A lot of lower caste women will experience some form of
Assault.
SA, assault. Yep, they will often experience assault. One of the other big problems, and assault in many form, not just sexual, but also
Yes.
you've probably heard about acid attacks. So
Yes.
they will get acid thrown at them. Yeah, it's really it's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this often happens inside marriages or sometimes in sort of communal violence clashes. They will do this to women as well. Like a lot of these extremist groups like the RSS, they will take younger women hostage, from families, like families of Muslims, for instance. So let's say the RSS starts communal violence in a Muslim majority area, they will go into people's houses or just in public and just like, if they see younger women and of course they don't care about age of consent, so they will, obviously cross the
Yes.
18 line a lot, which because, they're fascists, they're going to do that. So yeah, they are also CSA. They commit a lot of CSA. And so unfortunately what happens is in these communal riots, a lot of these women will get sort of kidnapped, or just abused on the spot. And it's just terrible. And this happens a lot now in India. And it's crazy because I'm about to go there in 2 months to visit family. I'm just going for a couple weeks. And yeah, I'm pretty scared, especially up north. This is very common, but it still happens throughout the country, even down south in places that are more sort of resistant to the national government. This still happens. One of them, obviously, it's mainly caste and gender discrimination. That's mainly what drives it. And of course religious discrimination, because these RSS people, they will go into the Muslim majority or Christian majority areas, and they'll do these things, and they will say, well, we are saving these young women from marrying Muslims. And because so
Oh,
one of the
by
things one
throwing
of this
acid in their
and
faces.
yeah, somehow that's saving them. And so the problem over there is now, and this is increasing, by the way, under Modi's administration. This has significantly increased. It has not decreased. It was much less when the liberal centrist, the Congress, were in power.
I
Um, So basically, but it still happened. It's much more frequent now. And of course, with the rise of social media in India, there's a lot of influence, right wing influence there. That's very strong, much stronger than it is in the United States, even. Because of this super dominance of social media, recruiting men to join these organizations and commit these acts of violence in service of, the Hindu Rashtra, the Hindu nation. Yeah, this violence against Muslims. So again, against women, and of course, they also abuse non-binary and trans and queer people. They do the same things,
I
even more so.
expected that.
Um, Yep, and when they go into Muslim majority areas, they will burn down. They do pogroms basically. They are burning down homes, businesses, places of worship. They are bulldozing areas that are resisting the government. Yep, yeah, they do all these things, and
And
they
that
do
is
this.
what
Yeah,
the Vesh described as for the greater good, yes?
it's not for the greater good. So Devesh or anybody also tell your friends too. You may be sitting, and this is directly directed to you. I'm not. Look. I'm not here to like single you out or call you a fascist. What I'm saying is, be careful of what you're apologizing for, right? Because what you are apologizing
You'll
for
forgive me for being
is
taken
is
against.
inhumane. It goes against the Geneva Convention, first of all. But even more so than any convention, this is basically like a complete denial of human rights, dignity, and existence. And unfortunately, the rhetoric that is being pushed by Modi and his ilk in the BJP and the RSS and other, extremist organizations are multiplying how often this happens. And so, when you say that this is for the quote greater good, what greater good are you referring to? Are
Just
you
just to
referring
be just to be
to, yeah?
clear, just to be clear, I am a bit lower energy today, but that was sarcastic. I don't
No, no, no worries, no worries.
I don't really believe in such a thing as a greater good via exclusion or discrimination of groups.
No, no worries. It's not against you. It's more sort of like, this is how Hindutva nationalists describe their actions as quote for the greater good of the Hindu nation, right? But and yes, the behind, I highly recommend. Sophie just put that down there. Yes, and I can vouch for it as a North Indian, as someone from the country who follows what's going on there. Robert Evans' three-part series on Behind the Bastards on Modi is excellent. Everybody, please listen to it. It is. He gets it. He
Where
gets it.
can we
So
find it?
it's on the Behind the Bastards podcast. I can link to the
Yeah,
episodes.
please. Yeah.
Behind the Bastards Modi, but
Karasu says, yeah, the rising violence against women is really scary and is going on.
yeah.
It has been going on for a while.
Yeah, it has. And so there is a three-part series. I'm going to link episode one, but that is episode one. There's two more after it. So if you look at it on, if you look it up, you'll see it in the feed. There are three episodes of it, but yeah, it talks about Modi's basically everything I've talked about here. But yeah. Fascists and ethno-nationalists always claim their actions are justified for the. Yeah, I mean that's what the Nazis did. That's what Russian nationalists do. Currently.
Well, that's
Yeah.
I'm gonna speak about genocide, of course, now, but it's
Hmm.
sort of like that well-known journalist from Poland, Jewish journalist from Poland, said that the genocide is a bastard child of the Enlightenment. That people that do genocide often see themselves as doing something good. They might not even enjoy the process itself. It might be dirty. It might be there might even be sort of find it horrible. There might even be mental breakdowns along the way. But what keeps them going is the image of a quote unquote better world that they will achieve once they get rid of that group which stands in the way for their vision of a better world, if that makes any
Yes,
sort
and
of
it's
sense.
extremely exclusionary of people that don't fit their definition of pure
Yes, that's why those
or yeah.
people have to be removed in order to achieve what needs to be achieved.
Yeah. And so this ideology that drives these people, the Hindutva ideology, which Hindutva translated basically means Hindu-ness, Hindu, the sort of, it's this Hindu identity, basically.
Yeah.
And so what it is they want a Hindu hegemony in India, just in the same way. I'm going to call out the Polish leadership, of course. Duda wants a
Duda.
Christian Poland.
Yeah, Duda.
Duda, Duda.
Andrzej Duda.
Andrei Duda. Okay, Andrei
Andrzej.
Duda. I don't. Andrei.
Andrzej.
Andrei. It's subtle. I'm trying to get it. Is it
Andrzej.
Andrei?
Yes.
I'm kind of getting it. I'm
Kind
not
of.
obviously don't
Yes.
speak.
Duda. It's like
But Duda is,
he's
yeah, is
basically
similar to.
just a pawn. He's just a spokesperson for
Mm.
the government. Like the main person that rules the country is the leader of the ruling party, Jarosław Kaczynski, the most
Kaczynski.
powerful.
Okay.
Kaczynski. Ironically
Kaczynski.
enough, he
Kaczynski.
has the word duck in his surname, which makes me rethink my branding choices. And he's basically the charge in the entire country. And, well,
Okay.
he is the leader of the party, and officially he's just the vice prime minister. But he is in charge. Whatever he says goes, basically, right now.
Yeah, and that's how people view Modi. So just real quick, what is Hindutva, right? So Hindutva is very similar ideology to, German Nazism or Russian nationalism or, white supremacy, of course, we have in, the Europe and the United States in its various forms. Basically, it's Hindu hegemony, and of course, it's this belief that there is an Aryan race of people in the subcontinent. Now, of course, they will say that if you're brown and you're from the subcontinent, it's a very racist idea, of course. If you're brown and from the subcontinent, you are a Hindu Indian. That's what they will say. Even though there is a wide variety of religious belief, both within and outside of Hinduism, outside the umbrella of
I
Hinduism,
mean, you're
uh,
Christian.
I'm a Christian. Yeah, and my family, I'm not like a recent convert either. My family, they have been in Christian education and ministry for the past like 3 generations. My grandfather was a bishop of the Methodist Church over there.
Bishop, that's a
So,
pretty high
yeah,
position.
so I am yeah, I'm a grandson of a clergyman, and so and there are a lot of Christians in India. There's millions of them, in fact. And now I do have criticisms of Christianity in South Asia. It's taking the turn of sort of Western evangelism, which is conservative and very problematic. So I do that on my own channel, which, if you don't mind me promoting, I will
No, of
post.
course. So if
I'm
in
over on the
case,
purple side. I'm not streaming right now. I'm just sort of chilling out. But that is, I'm gonna post it in YouTube as well.
yeah.
But that is
If it
my
doesn't show, I will just link it myself. Because
but yeah,
links
there you
get
go.
lost in the YouTube.
Yeah, I should probably maybe post when I'm going live in the bulletin board in Discord. But yeah, unfortunately, I have a lot of criticisms of South Asian Christianity. There's
Oh,
not a
okay.
lot of progressive voices, but that's like a different thing. That's something I do. I do segments on it on my channel from time to time. So thank you for yeah. Thank you. There's the full link. But yeah, that's my Twitch channel. I would appreciate any followers. But
You're
um,
probably bigger than me.
I hit 900 a month ago, and I'm slowly getting there. I'm on the road to 1K. So
So we are similar size. I'm 937.
yeah, so I'm almost there. I'm at like 920 something. I think 922 last night. But anyway, who's counting? It's about it's also the you know, I really before we get back into Hindutva, I guess I would say like
Mm-hmm.
the community I built the past couple years of streaming, which I'm basically at my 2 year mark. I think I got to do my 2 year soon. But yeah, the 2 years I've been streaming, people from all different communities, Vash's community, your community, Demon Mama's community, some people from Hassan's community too, and just people from across the left basically have joined. And then I've got people from like other like sort of non-political communities, like because I do a lot of racing on my streams. So you've probably seen me driving with the steering wheel and the simulator. So I do that kind of stuff. So I have people from the sort of motorsports community. It's a very interesting place, and I'm very grateful to all the people who have made it what it is.
Oh,
But
we here
uh,
have duckies swimming in a little pond.
yeah, you got ducky. A lot of. Oh, now we got more duckies joining in. So
Yeah.
there you go. Bridge building, indeed. That's what I'm about. So you won't see me like again. I'm not knocking anybody who covers like debate panels and stuff. My political
I do.
content is more around. I know that's cool, and that's cool. I think you do it in good faith, and you do it from a sort of like you. I think you do it from a sort of a good critical perspective, which I like. Which is good. That's sort of, it's not just sort of feeding on drama. It's sort of grounding it in a way, right? So
I even
what
took
I do
part in a
more,
panel. Yes.
yeah. But I guess this is kind of a sort of a panel. But it's what I do more is I cover the real what's going on in South Asia. I live in California. I've been here for almost a decade, so I cover what's going on in California. I work in tech, so I cover tech. That's basically what I do, and of course, I
All
cover
right.
motorsports and automotive from lefty
Right.
point of
I
view.
I
So
sort of I
yeah.
focus on sort of history and how it affects us today. I've been
Yep.
focusing on the Shoah lately.
Mm,
It's a thing that I feel like people don't really understand it, even though it's talked about all the time. If that makes any sort of sense, like
mm,
it's not as widely understood that we're very much living in the consequences of it. That Poland used to have like a huge bustling community that was predicted by some rabbis to become the leading community in the world,
mm,
and that many people in it were not part of the Zionist project. And
mm,
it is sort of important to remember that in a certain way, Israel as we know it came from it, if that makes
I
any
mean,
sense.
isn't it like one of the founding doctrines of sort of like a Zionist nation? Like, isn't that basically like, because I
The
mean,
Zionism
that's,
existed
yeah,
before, but it
of
was
course.
small.
Mhm.
It was a fringe
Fringe.
position.
Mm,
Like most in Poland, for example, at least, like most religious parts were against it because the Messiah must be here for Jewish people to return to Israel, which the
mm,
Messiah is not here. And second was the big secular portion of Jewish people in Poland. Of course, in Poland you had the Bund forming, like the socialist
right.
group of Jewish people, and they, on the other hand, had a secular reason not to like Zionism, which was Jewish people did not feel comfortable with the idea of being treated like a modern nation in the nation state sense.
Mm.
So that's,
So like anti-nationalists
yeah,
kind
in
of
a way. Like
sentiment, which is
there
good.
was this big idea of the Yiddish land, that Jewish people were bound together by this language Yiddish, but they did not have one land that they belonged to. They did not have one country. We were dispersed around the world, but united by this idea of the Yiddish land. And of course, um, the whole community, the whole everything about it, and the language itself as well was eradicated. Without a trace, there's nothing left, and people don't really sort of seem to understand that fully. You know?
Yeah, and I wish there was more understanding of that in the sort of Christian space that that I'm in, because I think again, unfortunately, South Asian Christians are very anti-Semitic, and they're anti-Semitic in also their support of Zionism. A lot of them actually do support Israel, and especially now with
Right.
the recent with the missile strikes that happened, right? So this week, so
Yeah,
they
and
are supportive of Israel, and it's like, guys, do you see it?
it's
Yeah.
it's really strange, like from the perspective of now, to read that book of Isaac Bashevis Singer, that takes place. The action of the book takes place before World War I, and he describes how socialists in their writing write. There was this quote. They write, "Oh, why chase a fantasy about some half desert land that people would have to go to, uh, where besides people already reside there? Why would you want to go there where you can just build prosperity here for the working class?"
Based, very based. I agree with that. And
And it's just
yeah,
then it's important that that whole thing was also, well, eradicated without a trace, you know? Like
yeah.
that was the more prevailing sentiment. Like, why should we go somewhere where there are already people living there, where we can try to build something for ourselves here where we are?
Mm.
And I, like, it's difficult to discuss stuff like what if scenarios of alternative history. But I'm pretty confident that if those events would not happen, we would simply not have Israel as it exists today. That I don't think that could have happened.
Maybe, yeah, and yeah, that's a whole nother conversation that I don't want to get into, but I just want to sort of
Yeah,
like
it's a bit.
from but in actually in reference to Israel. So one interesting thing that you'll notice with Hindutva nationalists,
Mhm.
just like sort of Christian evangelicals and Catholics and Orthodox people who all support Israel, Hindutva nationalists, interestingly enough, actually they're interesting. They are very anti-Semitic, like grossly anti-Semitic, the same way white supremacists are, right? They're very anti-Semitic, and a lot of them also worship Hitler. Surprise, surprise. But they are supportive of the Zionist movement. And the reason is because
Well,
Islamophobia. That's why it's Islamophobia. And but what's funny is Zionists will then turn around and say, "Hey, Zionists, of course, will then turn around and like I've literally seen on Twitter where a Hindutva nationalist will say India stands with Israel and with all the Hindutva all the fascist symbols and stuff and swastikas, and then you'll see a Zionist who will quote tweet them and say we don't want to be associated with, obviously they're racist, we don't want to be associated with you smelly Indians, all that kind of stuff. And so like there's like this inter-fascist hate. So like you'll see Hindutva nationalists praising Israel, and then the Israeli nationalists, the Zionists, will say will be racist, will hurl slurs at that person. It's really fucked up.
yeah,
So,
it is.
sorry, there's a
It
so
is.
that's basically like the link sort of with Hindutva and Zionism. There's this like weird link or support of Zionism because it comes from Islamophobia. Um, actually, Shay Hulud, Shay, I guess I don't know how if I'm saying your name
I will.
correctly.
I always should it Shai Hulud.
Shay Hulud. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
That's. No. I'm not saying my version is correct. I just saying how I would do it.
I'm hopefully I'm close. But I want to answer that question on YouTube chat. How much do these political divisions in South Asia bleed into immigrant populations? Unfortunately, casteism is very common in the South Asian diaspora around the world. So, immigrant communities throughout Western countries, and of course, we are also there's large South Asian communities in Singapore, Malaysia. You have there's a small community in Japan as well, just because of the tech industry. A lot of them go there to work in the tech industry. But generally speaking, it is in sort of English and sort of, English speaking countries and of course, in the EU as well. As I think, Lucy, you said your neighbors are from Punjab, right? If I'm remembering, I
Sorry,
may be
my neighbors.
misremembering. Don't you know like people in don't you have friends or
I
neighbors
think
who are
that's Karasu.
from Karachi, not no, you
Karasu.
Karasu knows. I think you said your friend was from Punjab, right?
Karasu is the second producer, but not me.
Yeah, I see them modding
Yes,
in
the
chat.
second producer
So
of this channel. Yes.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, you do good edits. I have to say your edits are really, really nice. I wish I could edit like that.
That's Somnia Static.
Somnia. Okay, Somnia does the.
The
You
editing.
work with people from Punjab. Okay, yep. So Punjab is in northwestern India as well. It's on the border with Pakistan. Well, actually, Punjab is split. Punjab was affected by the partition in 1947, right, at independence time.
Oh.
So Punjab, there's Punjab Pakistan side and Punjab India side. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you do background research.
Karasu is the brains of this operation.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and I can definitely tell you seem to have some information on this, but um, more friends from Kerala, which is in the south, the southwest, yeah, the southwest corner of the country. But uh, so to answer the other question about the and Tamil people from Sri Lanka, Yilam Tamil people, yeah. But to answer the question about immigrant communities, yes, unfortunately, casteism and religious sort of inter-religious conflict still prevails in the immigrant community. So again, this is not an anti-immigrant argument. This is a statement of saying, hey, we immigrated, but we still brought all the baggage with us. And so, unfortunately, this is resulting. So a lot, for example, in the United States, there are millions of South Asian people. I think it's up to at least 6 million. If not, it's one of the largest groups of immigrants in the United States in terms demographically. South Asians are also the wealthiest demographic in the United States by sort of ethnic origin, basically.
Also
The
mentioned
household income is very, very high. It's in the six figures on
also
average.
mentioned businesses and
Yeah, and a lot of them
restaurants.
are business owners. And so one thing I like to sort of bring up here, most immigrants from India, less so from Pakistan and the other sort of South Asian countries, but particularly from India, where the caste system is the strongest. Most immigrants from India who come over here generally are well educated. They're upper caste, and their families have enough wealth to be able to send them to school here, right, to get degrees and whatnot. Or they'll get their degrees in India or the UK, and then they will try to get jobs and climb the corporate ladder in America or Canada, let's say, right? So
Yeah.
that's what happens. That's sort of the main things you'll see in our community. Hey, Clumsy. Yeah, this is Boy Meets Mini, by the way. I'm in chat. Let me just do a trans rights. Where's your ducky trans rights? Hang on, let me find it.
Here is.
There it is. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Haralan, my girlfriend had been invited to work in the NHS. I've met some
Yes, that's true.
students from India that came to Poland to study medicine. Women.
Yeah, and so yeah, and that's common. Like a lot of us, and I actually want to get into why that is. So, but first about the issues with casteism and colorism and religious, all this stuff coming with us. Yeah, unfortunately, it comes with us. And so, as South Asian communities establish, right, usually we live in major cities where there is more employment. So, New York. You go to New York, Chicago. You come here. I'm in LA. Specifically, I'm in Los Angeles. You go to San Fran, Seattle, any of the, or go to Miami. South Asian people sort of have built their own communities, and you'll often see in these bigger cities and even smaller cities, they have like a neighborhood to themselves, kind of, sort of. They have like a little India, so to speak. You'll see, like here in LA, if you go to the city of Artesia, which is a suburb of LA. Artesia is basically almost all South Asian. It's the whole like main street there is all South Asian owned businesses, and cultural centers and stuff like that. So yeah, we're talking about South Asia generally. Greater rates. That's what we're talking about. Greater ain't. I guess I don't know how to say
Greater
it. Greater ain't. Yes. Yeah, so, and Sophie, that's another thing too. So if you a lot of South Asian people, their ancestors went to Africa during colonial times, right? They went to Africa to now lower caste, marginalized caste people, they were sent to Africa for indentured labor in the British Empire. Upper caste people were sent as sort of like, they sort of went to Africa to pursue business opportunities, right? And so South Asian people in many African countries are pretty wealthy. Not all of them, some of them are still working class, but many of them sort of over time and with generations have become wealthy through,
Oh,
capitalism, basically,
apologies.
business
Are
ownership.
you rich?
So my family, I would say, is sort of upper middle class back home in India, and of course, I work in the tech industry, so I will not survive the revolution. The guillotine will fall on me, most likely. Just kidding.
You're a
But
programmer?
I am a programmer. Yes, I do mostly software testing, automated testing, but I'm moving toward development with experience. So, but obviously, I have a degree in electrical and computer engineering. So, so Sophie, I know I'm memeing, of course, but so I'm not a manager or anything. I'm at the lowest part. I'm in the bottom of the corporate hierarchy
Oh,
still. So
well,
I'm just an employee.
well,
But
my big job is being the biggest Polish trans streamer,
based.
which means you should donate. I'm plugging in the, the note, the donate please thing.
There you go. So sorry, I'm just looking at chat over here.
Bruch, said plunger.
Baruch.
Bruch, said plunger cameraman. Bruch.
Um, but yeah, so unfortunately, in our South Asian diaspora, most of us come here as upper caste people, right? Upper caste people, people who have education, wealth, familial wealth back home. And so, but a lot of people from South Asia also come here who are marginalized caste. Actually, one of the sort
Oh,
of saddest examples is the kafala system in the Gulf countries. Like when you go to Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Qatar, right? When you go to those families, those countries, you know, usually young men or young women from they get their education in India and then they go work jobs in the kafala system in the Gulf countries, and so they can't go back and visit their family for years because the employer will illegally hold their passport, and the governments there, of course, do nothing about it. MBS doesn't care. So unfortunately, in the Gulf countries, this is where a lot of marginalized
sorry to
castes.
interrupt.
Sorry,
This is not
yeah.
a cookie. This is just a hormone package.
Which is sorry. Let me look at the the video
It's
feed.
just a hormone package. It's not a cookie. It's an empty hormone package.
There you go. Oh man, yeah, like the World Cup stadiums in like Qatar and in Doha, right? Or you look at how Saudi Arabia is basically it's the dictator wet dream, right? It's their they want to build they want to build these like brand new cyberpunk cities, basically, like Neom in Riyadh. So they're employing a lot of South Asian working class people, who are generally of lower caste or who are from marginalized or minority communities, particularly Muslim communities, or even a lot of South Asian Christians who are poorer. They will go to these countries and work. They'll do the hard jobs like construction, trucking, cleaning, becoming servants for very rich people over there. So, yeah, the dystopian flew over MBS's head. Oh, it absolutely did. But I'm trying to read that.
Apologies, I'm
What does that say? That's
What? What does what say? Why? Why? What happened?
Yeah, Dubai is essentially built on the blood of South Asian migrants. It is, from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Myanmar, right? So it's built on their on and Afghanistan, of course. So like it's built on their on the blood on their blood basically, and a lot of the workers die. So yeah, there is definitely marginalization, but also what you'll see in like in the U.S. Is you'll see South Asian business owners, and actually this is kind of true in the Middle East as well. In the Middle East, in the U.S. and all these like countries that we immigrate to, upper caste people will own businesses, and then they will basically like try to get other people from South Asia to immigrate over. And so what they'll do is when lower caste people arrive, they'll try to get jobs, right? And they'll, when they arrive in the country, they are when they arrive in the country, they are basically, looking for jobs. And the first place they look is people who they can talk to, people who can speak the language, right? So they will go to the South Asian community. And unfortunately, what happens is those upper caste business owners will hire them. And then, of course, do all the
Oh,
bad things,
that's right.
the discrimination, the not paying them, stealing wages, of course, using, being mistreating them as well. So unfortunately,
Not sure if
yeah,
you've
yeah,
included. I
this is
would
what
also
happens.
add the Philippines as so as exploited people. They also
Hmm.
are a migrant worker source.
Yep. Yeah, from South Asia. I think particularly a lot of Bangladeshi people, they get exploited. But certainly, the entire, people from South Asia generally are exploited in these countries. So, yeah. Um, yeah, and Dubai has no real sewage control or water infrastructure. That's the poop trucks. If you've watched Adam Something's video about Dubai being a joke, yeah, he's correct. That
I
video is
mean,
100%
it's
correct.
there used to be a thing in
Uh,
Poland, you know,
mm,
in places. You have a thing called shamba, you know,
mm,
under those houses that people would have. Um, those are cereal houses outside of the
mm,
out in the outskirts of the city with a small garden. It's fenced out, and under
mm.
those small gardens you'd have a big sort of how should I put it? A big canister, I guess, and all the things that people would do would go to that huge canister, and from time to time a truck would come, gather it all up, and leave. That used to be a thing, and
It used to
then
be.
and then um, just regular plumbing was later installed. But that used to be a thing in some places for a bit, that you used to have this place called Shambo underground, which
Mm.
would gather all the things, and then the Shambo trucks would come, gather it all up, and move on.
Haul it away. Yeah, poop trucks.
Yeah,
Yep.
that used to
But
be.
yeah,
So I am familiar with the concept. I am from first-hand experience. I am familiar with this concept.
firsthand. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and in many Indian cities, unfortunately, this is the reality too, because in Indian cities there is a lot of Indian cities have inadequate sewage systems. The only places where they really exist are in newer built areas that are for wealthy people. So one of the problems, actually, not problem, but one of the trends that's happening is that a lot of South Asian people who have immigrated outside the country, outside the homeland, they go, to the West. They get rich, right? They achieve the American dream. In fact, one thing I always say, and I have the pass, I can say this, is
You're not
that
about to say a
South.
slur, are you?
No, 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 no. What I'm
Okay.
saying is, South Asian people outdo white people on the American dream. They go harder on the American dream than white people do. Okay, I'm just being honest with you, because yeah, it's true. It's actually pretty true. Now, I'm not criticizing someone building a good life for themselves. I'm just saying that like they have outdone white people at the American dream. A lot of South Asian families are pretty wealthy, and so what happens is then they go back to India and or they look at India as a property investment. So they become landlords basically back home in the home country. And so then that has led to a lot of displacement, unfortunately, of marginalized people. And so now in many Indian cities, they build these American style suburbs. And you see this in many other Asian countries too. I think I know this is the case in Egypt, like in Cairo, they're building a whole new Cairo, basically. And so it's structured like an American suburb. It's terrible. They basically are doing this in many Indian cities. So and all these overseas Indians will buy apartments there and sit on them. Basically they're parasites, and and a lot of those areas, those are the only areas that have modern proper infrastructure.
So
Communications,
the prices
sewage,
are
water.
high.
Yeah. So, and the prices are very high. They're inflated. The real estate market is so inflated. It's almost sort of, it's this lucrative market, and
Incredible.
it's a little less lucrative now. It still is though. And so, yeah, this is what's happening in all the big cities and
Incredible.
even smaller cities in India. So, but yeah, that's kind of like what's happening in the immigrant communities here. Is there's a dominance of upper castes. There is obviously one other effect that's happened is the RSS and other organizations like it have branches in the United States, Canada, and Europe, and
Oh,
Australia. So,
really?
unfortunately, there is this tie back to the BJP, to fascism, and generally, how people join the RSS is through sort of business associations. So, cultural South Asian business associations, religious associations, through temples and stuff. So, that is like the main vector for fascism in the South Asian diaspora. And unfortunately, I'll send you that clip later of Albo in Australia welcoming Modi in like a wrestling superstar in Sydney. You will see all these South Asian people just like treat him like he's a rock star, and they don't understand the amount of harm he's causing. So yeah. And so that is what's happening in the immigrant communities. And one of the reason there's also so much immigration out of South Asia actually is under Modi. And this is another jab at Modi, a criticism. So anybody who in chat who supports Modi, hear me out on this. Youth unemployment has risen significantly. It has nearly doubled since the time Modi has been in office. Youth unemployment before Modi was around 15%, which is still terrible, but it has risen to nearly 30%. So nearly 1 in 3 young people in India often face long periods of unemployment, out of school. So yeah,
I'm trying
youth
to
unemployment
remember.
is massive over there, and that's why so many of them leave the country. And then these Hindutva nationalists will say,
Oh,
"Why are you leaving the country for the West, for the modern West and wokeness and all this stuff?" I'm like, "There's no
wokeness.
job for me here, dude."
Wokeness.
Yeah, and so
Of
they're very
course.
anti woke as well, of course. Yeah,
Trying to remember
yeah.
the things that that person said in the chat. I think one of the big
Mm.
things they were talking about was security.
Yeah, so and actually I have there's a good Modi's own actions as prime minister destroyed that notion of security. Uh Now I don't know what community those chatters come from. But in the amount of violence, communal violence has increased under Modi.
Right, you
The
even
amount,
mentioned the
yeah.
amounts of assault on women and
Mhm.
girls.
Women and girls, yeah, there's assault, there's sort of like arranging marriages to Hindu men as well. That's one thing. To They will take young women, and often they, under 18, they will try to get them married to Hindu men and perform the ceremony and stuff. And so obviously in collusion with priests and temples, like it's terrible. And then of course, you look at the current situation. I don't know how many of you heard about the situation in Manipur state over in northeast India
Not
by
much.
Myanmar. But in
Myanmar.
Manipur state, there is, yeah, Manipur. So I'm going to put it in chat here. This is how it's spelled in English. But look, you've probably heard about
Manipur.
the ethnic tensions there. in Manipur, there is currently a pogrom going on of a minority indigenous group of people called the Kuki-Zo people. And basically, the majority Meitei ethnic group, they want to basically genocide the Kuki-Zo. And so the Meitei are mostly Hindu and Buddhist, whereas and again, that's not a criticism of Hinduism or Buddhism. I'm just saying that like there is this religious element too. And Kuki-Zo people are generally either Buddhist or Christian, and generally are of lower castes, or they are what indigenous, or what we call Adivasi people. So indigenous in our
Adivasi
it,
people.
Adivasi means indigenous.
Adivasi.
So and they are different from Dalit people. Dalit people are more just sort of, they are, lower caste. But Adivasi people come from specific like tribal groups, indigenous groups. So,
Correct.
yeah, so unfortunately in Manipur, these Meitei extremists, they are basically doing pogroms right now, and the Indian army is intervening, but they are basically opening the door for Meitei extremists to like burn down entire Kuki-Zo villages and neighborhoods, and driving them out and killing them, and and obviously, SA, CSA, kidnapping, all kinds of stuff going on. And of course, the Indian army is, and of course the local police force is on the side of the Meitei extremists, unfortunately, and so is the government of the state of Manipur. So, yes, it's very similar to the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar. In fact, what's kind of insane is that Modi, for as much as he like says, "Oh, we're making the country more secure," the Indian army is actually training and actively arming the military junta in Myanmar as well. And Myanmar, in return, is arming the Meitei extremists. So I was born there, Greater Rains. I was born there. I came to the U.S. when I was 4, and I have been back many, many times to visit family. In fact, I'm going there again in a couple months. Well, I'm kind of scared, to be honest. But I got to see family. My grandfather is, in his 80s. I better go see him. It's been a while.
It's
Yeah.
important
So
to visit.
India and Myanmar are sort of collaborating on genocide. It's really, really sick. Sickening, I should say, not sick as in base, but sickening, of course.
Right. Yes.
It's terrible,
Yes, the
absolutely
word can
terrible.
have different meanings.
But yeah, and so economically, socially, and of course, politically, Modi is an absolute disaster. Actually, so for anybody who supports him, I just want to tell you that Modi is a disaster on all these fronts. If you want to talk about security, yeah, sure, okay. What is he protecting you from? Minorities, because that is how, the same way in the US we see Hispanic people as like a threat or whatever, right? As
What
sort
you
of,
do?
so in the United States, right, how like Hispanic people are looked down upon by white supremacists. It is very similar to how lower caste people, Adivasi people, and of course other minority groups are looked down upon. So yeah. Do I prefer here or there? I have a lot of criticisms of the United States, of course. I'm not one of those America bad Hasanabi heads, okay? But and I'm not a Hasanabi head either. But
The Lucy head.
I prefer the United States. I would actually prefer more of like the Nordic countries if I were to like pick an ideal place to live. Maybe the Nordic countries, just because of their social democracy. But Nordic countries are also very racist against brown people, so I don't know. Yeah, America is bad, but it is materially and socially better and more progressive than many places in South Asia. It's certainly far, far ahead of South Asia.
I must
But
say,
yeah,
as a bit of a
it is
plug in
still,
here,
yeah, go ahead.
that Vietnam is a nice place to live.
It seems to be. It seems to be, yeah. Vietnam seems pretty cool.
It is very nice. I actually almost moved there permanently.
Really.
Yes, I had a one-way ticket and a plan, and then the borders were closed because of COVID. I
Hey,
never
Daho's in
got
side
my
chat.
money back for my one-way ticket.
Oof. Well,
Yeah.
Vietnam L. But hey, you know what?
No,
Vietnam
it's
seems
not
like
the
a really cool.
Vietnam L. It's the airport. It's the airlines L.
Of course, always the airlines L.
They didn't want to get me my money back.
That's messed up.
Vietnam is really nice. Really nice. It has the perfect three: nice people, nice weather, and nice
Mm.
food. There's even because I'd go
Mm.
to Saigon. Saigon is the best place to go. It even has
Mm.
a club. I think it's a club which is owned by a trans woman,
That's based.
which
That's
is
really, really
very,
based.
which is something that could not exist in Poland, Warsaw. So Saigon is actually more progressive than Warsaw.
That's pretty awesome. And there are places again, I know I've been dooming this all this time about South Asia. There are parts of South Asia that are fairly progressive. Get in the south particularly,
Thank you.
cities
Thank
like
Calico.
Chennai, Oh, thank you for the tier two. That's very, very generous. Blah.
Yes.
No, that's awesome. A tier two. Um, yeah, I think I need to. I'm a white name. I need to fix that. I'll fix
True.
that after I get off of here. But and just join y'all in chat. But so so um so basically, there are places of progress in South Asia. There are pockets of resistance developing. The queer movements throughout South Asia. Both in cities and in rural and Adivasi communities. There are strong and strengthening queer movements there. There are many opposition movements in say Muslim and Christian communities. Not so much in Christian communities, but the Muslims definitely there in Muslim communities there are like grassroots movements. Of course, anti-caste movement is still very strong over there, even if it's a minority of voters right now. But there are places in India that are fairly progressive. Goa is fairly progressive on the west coast. That was a Portuguese colony, and they are. It's mainly where Konkani people live. But yeah, they are majority Christian, but they are still quite progressive.
You got
Even
a
if they have their
subscription.
problems. Oh, thank you, fake Alec Kyle Parker. Well, that's not a fake subscription. Thank you for the tier two.
But don't
Let me.
hesitate to donate.
Yes, and of course, I think I am a Patreon giggler as well.
You
So,
are?
yes, I think it's renewing. I'll check it. I'll make sure it's renewing. But yeah, I am a Patreon giggler as well. But I was saying that like there are places of progress. In southern India, the state of Tamil Nadu. If I had to live in India, if I had to live in South Asia, I would probably live in Tamil Nadu, of all places. I would live in Chennai or many of the other, cities over there. Coimbatore, Madurai are really cool cities. I would probably live in Bengaluru, although Bengaluru is seriously crowded. It's more crowded than Hanoi, by the way. It's so many people. So, it's like what, 15 million, something like that.
Hanoi.
Um,
Hanoi is nice, but I like
mm,
Saigon more.
Saigon, yeah. Yeah, Hanoi is just massive.
Hanoi is no, Hanoi is quite small actually.
Mm,
Smaller than Saigon.
really? Okay, maybe I have my
Yeah, Hanoi is like quite small.
mm,
There's a very nice traditional art, like well, okay, I'm calling it traditional because it's old, but it's actually
yeah.
old French type architecture, I guess,
Mm.
because of the whole thing that happened. But it's a nice looking city, very. But I just like Saigon more. It's
I
nicer.
mean, Hanoi almost had a Formula One race, so they almost had one scheduled, and then it got canceled because COVID in 2020. So
It is a very romantic spot
I bet it
with
is. Yeah,
a
I
big body of water.
some Southeast Asian countries are becoming progressive. Yeah, so and in fact, Tamil Nadu, I mean, they still have this like, religious tradition there, the various religious traditions sort of. And of course, the impact of British colonialism, and of course, well, even French. There was some French colonialism there too, a little bit, but the British like eke them all out of there pretty quickly. But in Tamil Nadu, there is still this, emphasis on heterosexuality. But Tamil people are generally the most accepting people of trans and non-binary people. and I think that comes from old Tamil culture and tradition, where they were not exclusively heterosexual, or they did not enforce a binary. So in older Tamil culture, there were actually a number of different gender identities, and so. In fact, in the Tamil language, there are words, and I guess they're sort of modernized words, but there are terms for trans, non-binary, intersex,
That's me.
and
I'm trans.
and yes. So and of course they have they have terms for gendered, trans people, as well as a non-gendered term for trans people. And I, again, I'm not a Tamil speaker, but I know some of the terms. But the word for a trans woman, so a trans femme person,
That's me.
is tirunangai.
Tirunangay.
Tirunangai, yeah, gay. And
Tirunangay.
A, it's A at the end, yeah. Tirunangai.
Tirunangay.
Um, and then the for a trans mask person, it's Tirunambi. Tirunambi. And then if you
Tirunambay.
want the, yeah, Tirunambi. And then for a non-binary person, I think it's more general, just like a trans non-binary person, which I guess is kind of, that's sort of an umbrella term for non-binary, or I don't know, like basically for a
Tirunambay.
non-binary person, it's tirunar. Tirunar is non-binary.
Tirunangay.
Yeah, tirunangay, trans
Tirunangay.
femme, tirunambi, trans mask.
Trans femme.
Yeah. Yeah, tirunambi is trans mask, and then tirunar is non-binary. And then the intersex is, I'm trying to remember, it's urupal. Urupal. Yeah, Udupal is,
Urpal.
if I'm saying, yeah, Udupal, Udupal,
Urpal.
Udupal, yeah,
Urpal.
is the term in for intersex people. So yeah, Tamil, the Tamil culture is much more inclusive of LGBTQ identity. This is Tamil. Yeah, I'm not a Tamil speaker. I'm not from that place. I am from northern India. I'm from Uttar Pradesh. So I speak more
Uttar
Hindi,
Pradesh.
Urdu, Uttar Pradesh. Yeah,
Uttar
Uttar
Pradesh.
Pradesh. Yeah. Yeah, which is sort of in the north, where the Taj Mahal and places like that are. But so I speak more Hindi and Urdu, and unfortunately, the only term historically that has been there for queer for like sort of third, they basically, it's a third gender basically, and they call it, and
Ah,
I don't like it because it's a very sort of tokenizing term. It's called hijra. If you've heard of the hijra,
if
um,
it's a tokenizing term, then I won't try to repeat it.
yeah, again, it's historical because it was sort of a recognized third gender in sort of South Asian culture, but they are basically, it's sort of a general term for people who are trans, intersex, or who are eunuchs. Eunuchs who are like basically like people who are castrated, basically. So it's kind of a brutal term. That's why I don't like to use the term hijra. But yeah, basically, it's like an officially recognized third gender throughout in more sort of northern and central regions of South Asia. And it's more, again, it's more of a North Indian term. Yeah, it's a controversial one because historically, at least in in ancient empires, and of course up to the modern day, Hijra people were kind of regarded as like these sort of like they're kind of they were kind of regarded as like these people who had very special, like a special spirit within them. And they were they had this very specific role in society. So they weren't like, they did not live like they didn't really have agency. So the problem with the term hijra is it's been used to sort of it's been used as a way to recognize but also marginalize these people, right? So it is a complex term. I will just say that much. And also, one of the misconceptions people have when you say hijra is that these people are there's this weird like ace phobia going on as well, where hijra people are regarded as asexual, which they're not, all of them are. So it is like this weird thing that like they're the they're sort of regarded as sort of these people you don't want to sleep with, basically. So
Oh.
it is very, it's exclusionary. But there
Hmm.
are there are, these communities that still exist throughout the country, and unfortunately, they face a lot of marginalization. Police abuse them a lot. Police will arrest them often and abuse them, and of
Apparently that
course,
increased
SA.
because of the British presence.
Um, yes, and unfortunately, yeah, during the British Empire times, they were heavily marginalized because,
Because from what I've heard from that Stephen Fry, was it? Stephen Fry documentary?
mhm.
Like he said that apparently before the British rule, they were in a much higher position in the.
I wouldn't say higher position. I think that's where Stephen Fry kind of gets it wrong.
And
Where
that's
so
where you
so
come in to correct the record.
Yeah, or sort of provide a more complete explanation. So yeah, Hijra people were regarded as sort of they were regarded as like a third gender. They were given like official status in like the Mughal empires and stuff. But again, they were relegated to certain roles in society as well. So they were marginalized in that way, unfortunately. So and oftentimes they were, obviously they were mainly they were sort of used and abused by they were basically pimped out. They were basically pimped out. They basically worked under pimps. They were prostitutes.
Oh,
So yeah, unfortunately. So yeah, the term hijra has a lot of baggage,
that's
unfortunately, and I feel like we need to invent we need to sort of progress North Indian languages like or like Hindi or Punjabi or Urdu. All these languages that are spoken up north, they need to progress and be more inclusive. But unfortunately, Modi doesn't want that because it's woke. He's anti-woke.
anti-woke.
So, yeah. So again, that's queer people in South Asia, depending where you go, are not very well treated. Exceptions do exist, like again, Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, they're being treated better. In Kerala is kind of weird because they are accepting, but also Kerala is much higher percentage of Christians. So Christians are obviously there are very anti-LGBTQ. Like 90% of them are. So there's that issue. And then, of course, yeah, like outside of those areas, there isn't a lot of progress being made in sort of queer acceptance and queer and sort of queer rights as well. There's not a lot of progress there. So.
Right.
Yeah, priestesses who were sex workers. Yeah, there was something. I think in particular regions, in particular regions, I think
Could
that
you
was the
excuse me
case.
for a
So
moment?
no worries, no worries. Take a
To
break.
go for.
We
No,
probably
I
need a
need to
break.
go to the toilet.
No worries. Yeah, I probably I can talk to chat a little bit
Yes, please,
while
please
you're
entertain the chat and encourage them to donate. That's the most important thing. I need to
Yes, please
get
support
to
Lucy.
the dentist real quick, real
Yes, please
fast.
support Lucy.
Did you
Yes,
know that
and
I've been
yeah.
walking with a broken tooth for 2 years now?
Oof. Ouch. A broken tooth all this time. So are you gonna get it filled or are you gonna get like a implant?
I'm gonna get it fixed up.
I hope soon. So let's help Lucy get to that. Let's help Lucy get to that.
Hopefully, camera is not actually showing that much by.
I couldn't tell. I guess if yeah, I couldn't really tell honestly, but
If you
um,
met me, you'd see.
I
Okay,
know. No
I'm gonna
judgment.
be.
No judgment from me, obviously. But yeah, let's all in fact let me sign back into the site. Let me I think when I got the tier 2 sub it signed me out. So let me
It signed you out.
Yeah, the GG sites do that. When
Oh,
you resub, you have to sign back in. I
see,
just
I've
did
got
it.
a big bottle.
Do a couple gifties here.
Boom.
Go. Yeah, while Lucy takes a break.
Yes, I do have to go to the toilet. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you to it. So yeah, chat. Hopefully, I know I threw a lot at you today, but like I hope that like it gets you to see. I think many of you probably aren't Modi supporters, but if anybody is, just keep in mind that for all the populism he pushes, it's all fake. It's all fake. It's just he, he'll say India's economy is growing. No, youth unemployment is like 30% or more. And a lot of people are leaving. A lot of people with degrees, with expertise in an area, are leaving. Quack indeed. There you go, Darumba. You are no longer a white name. Um, Kerala, yeah, Kerala's Christianity is still goes back to the 8th century because of the sort of because people there believe in the legend of the Apostle Thomas coming there right after the death of Jesus, or at least some time after, and basically the first group of converts were ministered to by the Apostle Thomas. So no longer white. There you go. But yeah. Exactly, clumsy. And so the problem is when they cite the economy, it's like they ignore a lot of the other issues around it. In fact, the one of the I talked about Ambedkar earlier. In fact, I'll put his name here in chat. Somebody you should all read up on, by the way, B.R. Ambedkar. Ambedkar was one of the leaders of the sort of British movement during colonial times, sort of late 1800s into going into the early to mid 20th century. And he was the framer of the Indian Constitution. So a lot of people in India call him the father of the Constitution. So but unlike Thomas Jefferson in the United States, Ambedkar was very far ahead of his time. He was a feminist. He was anti-caste. He also called out capitalism and sort of colonial white supremacy. And he wanted a country where there was more autonomy for an inclusion of the different language and ethnic groups, and he wanted the whole concept of caste abolished. So yeah, he was very, very far ahead of his time, Ambedkar, and he's really somebody I look up to. I don't agree with him 100%, but like 95%, I agree with Ambedkar. There were some things I have some bones to pick with him, but generally speaking, one of the great sort of freedom fighters of India and South Asia generally. And one thing he said is that the you can't just fix the economy. You have to have mass social liberation. That is the only way you're going to be able to fix all these issues. And one of the main things holding back the subcontinent is the problem of caste division. And of course, along with caste division, you have gender discrimination, particularly against femme people, but also non-binary, trans, and intersex people. And of course, you have the class discrimination, which hand in hand goes with caste. Caste is sort of an all-encompassing thing that sort of ties into all the other forms of discrimination. And of course, colorism. Colorism is a big problem there. Like one issue that comes up a lot, especially because I'm from Northern India. Northern Indian people, again, this is sort of a myth. People up north think, oh, I'm lighter and fairer skinned than those South Indian people who live in the hotter places down south. It's this weird racist colorist thing. But, and so up north, you'll see people will often use slurs against South Indian people. Basically, they call them the Hindi equivalent of the N word, which I will not say here, obviously. Yeah, they will basically call them dark skinned people in a derogatory way. So many of your Kerala friends in the UK really don't like Modi. Yeah. So there are a lot of us who, South Asian immigrants who've left, who've immigrated out, who are, who don't really like what's going on over there because a lot of us, especially those of us who come from minority communities, who are not, upper caste Brahmin Hindus from the north, will say that will not like what's going on because our families were affected by those things. Our communities back home were affected by these things, by communal violence started by the Hindutva nationalists, by certain laws that are passing. So yeah. And of course, Modi being an economic failure as well. So economic and of course social failure. In fact, one of the craziest incidents of communal violence that happened, this was last week, by the way. I'm pulling this up on Indian news right now. There was in the city of Jaipur. Jaipur is up north. It's near Delhi. It's sort of in the desert part of India in Rajasthan. So in Rajasthan state, there was an incident where it was an accident. It was a motorcycle accident. Two bikes collided with each other, and it was a fatal head-on collision. So between the bikers. So, but what ended up happening is the RSS and other Hindutva nationalist organizations spun the story because it turned out that one of the riders who was in the crash was Muslim and the other was a Hindu guy. So they made it all about the religion and, of course, paid no mind to the lost lives of the two bikers. And so what ended up happening is in Jaipur there was communal violence, and of course they were blaming the Muslim person for deliberately hitting the Hindu person on their bike, even though that didn't happen. It was an accident. So
That
yeah.
I have
So
a matzah
and
for
I'll
me.
link that story. I'll link that story in chat. I was just talking about an incident actually of communal violence.
Oh,
um, but I also got Dahurumba's son. So
if Lucy
there
gets
we
her
go.
teeth fixed, she'd be engaged in anti-British action. Oh no. This is a matzah, you see?
Hmm.
It's the thing that people accuse Jewish people of putting children's blood in.
Yeah, but it's basically it's unleavened bread basically, right? Is that what matzah is, like an unleavened grain?
Or
If I understand.
I guess sort of. It's like this. You can crush when you make soup. Some of the recipes involve crushing this into dust, adding water, and forming little balls that you boil that you can add to the soup from this.
Interesting. I guess, yeah, I've had it before. I've had matzo ball soup because here in LA, sometimes I order from the Jewish deli. So I'll order, I'll order the, I will order the pastrami and matzo ball soup and, you know, sometimes because it's really good. So I'll eat that sometimes.
It's
And
easy to make those
yeah.
balls. You crush this to powder, add
Mhm.
water, a bit more, and you form the balls.
I guess, yeah, kind of like Spätzle, like German Spätzle or uh I'm trying to think in India if we have something similar. I think we do. We have something kind of like it. Oh yeah, in India actually they take tapioca. They will make like a out of tapioca seeds. They will make like a powder kind of, or they'll dry and crush them, and then you can actually fry them, and they become kind of like fritters or something,
Wow.
but they're made out of tapioca. So in we'll often eat that. I forget exactly what it's called. Um, I know. I think it's in Tamil actually. I kind of know. I actually know the word in Tamil. I think it's muruku. Muruku is what they call it. Those little fritters that they make. Um, but yeah, that's one. It's kind of similar to that, I guess. Lucy looks like an anime girl running late for school. Yeah. Oh god.
Mm. But not
Any
all
book
of
or
the
article?
but not all of
Uh,
the sorry, but not all of the unleavened bread has children's blood in it.
apparently, so allegedly. um, Okay, so MSDXR, any book or article recommendations for critiques of Modi? We did mention the Behind the Bastards podcast. That is a good starting point, where they did a three-part episode on Modi. So if you're more into the podcasting, but if you want literature, um, so there's obviously I would say don't so much get too into the like because I mean there's obviously books written on this. One of the books I actually do recommend if you want to learn more about caste is called The Trauma of Caste, and it's actually by a an activist. Her name is Thenmoji Sundararajan. She is a Tamil person who immigrated to the U.S. but also faced caste discrimination here from fellow South Asian people, and
Mm.
so she's an activist here. In fact, she is one of the people who helped push the caste discrimination bill, the anti-caste discrimination bill in California. So to ban caste
She had something
discrimination.
left.
So, but The Trauma of Caste by uh, Thinmoji Sundararajan. That's her name. There it is. But do check that out. She also talks about the BJP and Modi in that. So that's one book I would highly, highly recommend. But also talks about more like the long history as well. So you'll get sort of that historical perspective, which Lucy, we know you're all about. um, and then if you want sort of like a lefty perspective as well, let me just pull this up. Hang on a minute. What's like a good there's just so many like news articles, but if you want like hang on, let me find it. Let me try to find a like a recent article that like it's sort of like a like a long like an investigative piece. Um Let me see. Like a longer investigative piece. But yeah, let me find it. But yeah, basically I hope like sort of everything I've explained today sort of just like disproves like why Modi is not or proves that why Modi is not a good leader. Like I hope it proves that because it's like he will say, "Oh, I'm shaking hands with all these developed Western nations with oh yeah, here's an article. Here's a good article.
I mean,
But he's feigning this sort of superpower status, and we landed on the south pole of the moon. The recent moon mission that India succeeded with, right?
I
And
mean,
so,
the leader of
but
North
beyond that, it's
Korea also shook
yeah.
hands with Trump, didn't he?
Well, Trump shook hands with all these sort of fascist leaders, right? And but yeah, this is another article. This is more of sort of a sort of an overview of like this article is a good overview of sort of like all the things he's done to like destroy the country and why you shouldn't vote for him. So, yeah. So this is a good sort of lefty article on that I posted in chat. But that talks about it, and there's much more. Obviously, the Wire. This is not the Daily Wire. This is the Wire. It's a lefty news source in India. It's based
Daily
in
Wire,
Delhi.
huh?
Not the Daily Wire. No, it's a North. It's mainly North Indian, but they cover the South as well. Someone got muted. Oh, the long link. Okay, okay. Yes, Sophie, thank you for posting that. The link was too long, but let me get the share link. So there is a book called The Annihilation of Caste, and this is one of this, in my opinion, not in my opinion, but this should be read by all leftists. All leftists should read this. If you're into theory, please read The Annihilation of Caste by Ambedkar. I mean, obviously one of the freedom fighters of India. I'm just looking for the link here.
What about
But yeah, the Annihilation of Castes, that book.
censored?
There we go. Yeah, the link was too long. Here, this is the shorter link. There we go. But yeah, this in fact you can get it for free actually. There is a PDF of it you can get for free. Let me find it. Yeah, Columbia University has it for free has it for free. Yeah. And what it is, it's a speech. So the Annihilation of Caste is a speech that Ambedkar was going to give in 1935. So this was around the time of like this was like in the time of like the Indian resistance against the British, to kick them out. And so this was in 1935. Where he was about to give a speech about caste. He was going to give it to a bunch of like dignitaries, and it was at a
Why didn't he?
it was at a freedom conference back in those days.
Why
And
didn't he?
so He never ended up giving the speech. He was disinvited from there because a lot of the people in the conference expressed they thought he was creating division by mentioning caste. And it's again, it's the in India, unfortunately, when you mention caste, people say, "Oh, you're the one bringing it up, therefore you must be the caste, the one who hates lower caste people." It's very similar to how conservatives in America will say, "Oh, you're the one talking about black people
Race
being
all the
oppressed,
time,
therefore
yeah.
you're racist." Yeah. So unfortunately, with caste, it's the same brain rot. Um, but yeah, that's the free copy of the Annihilation of Caste there.
Excellent.
Um, there's a lot of reading, but if you sort of skip like the first 10 pages because it's all
Reading is
intro,
good.
yeah.
Can you
But
DM those
if
things to me as well?
sure, I will. Yeah, let me DM this to you. So the Annihilation of Caste by Ambedkar. Um, this I recommend all leftists read Ambedkar. All even like you know he even has criticism of the tankies in India. He has criticism in there about like the CPI and the CPIM. So, yay, freedom, freedom, brother. Um, and then this is a good article about Modi that I highly recommend. Modi article. And then of course, did I need to get the Behind the Bastards link. Hang on, let me get that. But yeah, I hope what I covered today really like basically convince. I don't know if it'll reach any Modi voters if they're gonna dig their heels in and vote for him
You should
anyways.
put
But
these
like,
links and recommendation in the Discord server. Yeah. Can you link all of these recommendations and the links to me in DM?
sure. I think I sent you a
The
couple of
whole
them.
set.
Let me. Yeah, they should be in Discord DM. But let me find the. Where did I send the podcast link? That was a while ago. Find the.
Where should I put it? How should I? Karasu, help me. Where should I put it on the server? Announcement? Oh, did you take questions already?
I'm sorry. What?
Have you already taken questions?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I answered a few, but and Sophie, I'm glad you found it informative and sort of, from the perspective of a, someone who's actually from here. So,
Announcement.
from the subcontinent, so.
Create a library on your. That's a good
That's a good
idea.
idea. That's a good idea. So in conclusion, Modi bad. Modi is Indian Hitler, basically.
Oh, goddamn.
Yep, I said it.
Yes,
Like
hopefully you won't start a war.
so yeah, I mean, it's not so much war. Like I'm not as concerned about war with Modi, although I mean with Pakistan potentially that's the scary thing. The scarier thing for me though with Modi is pogroms, the expansion of pogroms and genocide within the country. I think that's the real concern at the moment. It's not so much the conflict with Pakistan; it is more the sort of internal internal sort of war crimes
Especially
that are already
since
happening. Yeah.
they will probably go unnoticed and unchallenged.
Sophie.
What happened?
you, Sophie, you remember when non-compete said the Nazis had a point? Modi had a
Oh my
point.
god.
Literally. Yeah, and now thankfully, within, like I said, within the country, there is growing resistance to the BJP and Modi because they are so far to the right, and people are starting to see, violence escalate, and it's directly affecting their safety. So now people are getting sort of tired and sort of, I guess, allergic to Hindutva nationalism and its consequences. So thankfully, there is growing resistance. That said, it is still a minority of voters who are voting against Modi. So only in certain regions. So in certain regions, like in the South, there is heavy resistance against the RSS because one thing that actually I was going to bring this up too. So remember how I talked about how Hindutva nationalists don't like South Indian people? So, people in the southern states. And, it's not just the racism, it's also the language difference. Dravidian languages are very different from, sort of the North Indian languages. So, but it's not just that, it's that in Hindutva ideology, they want to basically they want to impose Hindi and Sanskrit as the only languages, basically. They want to erase a lot of other languages and only keep some regional languages like Gujarati and sort of the northern languages. They basically want the southern languages gone because they don't consider them Indian languages, even though Tamil is a very old language from almost like 12,000 years ago that developed in the subcontinent.
Wow.
Malayalam is 10,000 years old. These languages, these Dravidian languages, indigenously developed in the subcontinent. But unfortunately, just like China did in the 1960s with Mandarin, um,
I'm sorry.
oh, sorry, no worries.
Oh my god.
Uh,
Sophie.
I wasn't even watching chat, and I just saw that. Oh my goodness. But yeah, to your second message, yes, that's correct. Yes, it's ethno-nationalist, cultural nationalism with racism and all that stuff. And of course, it's funny because if I talk to these Hindutva nationalists, they would say, "Hey, dude, you're from Uttar Pradesh. You're from the north. Therefore, you are part of the Aryan race." They would literally tell me that to my face. They would try to tell me you're better than those South Indian people. Like that's what they would try to tell me. But I'm a North Indian person who opposes all that and wants more inclusion and more diversity. How tight are controls on media by the right in India vary. The conservative bloc is very strong in the media and, of course, in political and media institutions. Basically, most of the main media in India is controlled by the BJP. So if like for example, that India Today is one of the biggest news channels in India. They're the main news channel, and they are very right wing. And there's many others too, but they are huge pushers of Hindutva propaganda, and of course, Islamophobia, anti wokeness, the whole deal.
Anti-wokeness that destroyed the wokeness that destroyed Western Europe, which, if we have
Yeah,
time, we will get into today.
another time. Yes, I've been on for a while.
I'm sorry.
Um,
I had my headphones
yeah,
on.
another time. Yeah, or I guess are you
Or
gonna get into that tonight on your show?
I'm gonna react to a video of a social scientist who did a video
Oh boy.
about Poland. Why Poland
Yikes.
is based. Your turn, that's right. In a moment, Hamzi, it will be your turn.
Um, but
Hamzi
yeah,
is
I
the
guess
second guest for the night.
then and like yeah. Oh god, yeah, apologia apologia for the Polish government. Yikes. But
Oh,
yeah.
it's more than just apologia for the Polish government. It's, among other things, not to spoil the video that we're about to. We're not okay. First, we do the clumsy segment, but it's like we have Holocaust denial. We have
Yikes.
there's I made notes. I took notes. I actually prepared myself for this one. I actually pre-watched this one because it's Yeah,
Yeah, actually, I wanted to finish answering Shai's question
of course.
in YouTube chat about the media control. So one of the
Mm-hmm.
thing that India is infamous for is their treatment of journalists, and particularly journalists critical of Modi's administration and the BJP, and of course of the caste system. Basically, the Indian government black bags journalists. Just to to put it bluntly, they black bag a lot of journalists, or they will like cancel all their social media accounts. They will jail them. The police will brutalize them. The RSS will dox them and and threaten them in public. The It's just that there's a lot of marginalization of journalism in India, unfortunately. So, one example recently was in the state of Kashmir up north. Obviously, Kashmir is a place that is highly contested, in the region by multiple countries and governments. But there was for a long time a free press outlet in Kashmir that was well supported by people who live there, by the various ethnic groups of people, uh, you know, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, it was very well supported. And it was called the Kashmirwala. Kashmirwala was an independent news outlet that existed for decades there. And they were independent. They were critical of the Indian government, and of course of Kashmiri nationalist movements as well. Those can be problematic, but they were sort of a people's voice. And unfortunately, the Indian government has shut them down. Basically, they arrested all the top journalists and writers, and they basically shut them down. So they are no longer operating, and their site was also shut down. So I can't even access their articles, sadly. So yeah, the
Oh,
Kashmirwala was shut down. Currently in India, they have arrested some left-wing journalists from outlets like lefty outlets like News Laundry, Alt News, and also from the Quint as well. There are journalists being threatened right now, and they are in prison. And in fact, even global correspondents have been arrested in India before. There was one, what's her name again? I should remember. CNN journalist. Um, India arrested. Who was it? Um, it was yeah, and so they do a lot of 1984
oh,
on
Alex.
journalists. Like the police will raid their houses and stuff. But I think there was one CNN journalist um who was arrested. What was her name again? Rana Ayub. Rana Ayub is a sort of
Rana Ayub.
Rana Ayub. I'm gonna put her
Rana
name here
Ayub.
because she is a CNN correspondent. Rana Ayub. She was
Ayub.
arrested. Yeah. So look her up. She was arrested by the Indian government. And she's a CNN. No, it's not CNN. Sorry, Washington Post. She's a WAPO correspondent. But she's based out of Mumbai. Um, yeah, very similar to how Israel treats Palestinian journalists. And like I said earlier, the Hindutva nationalists, they love Zionism. They love what Israel is doing. They're behind Israel because they hate Muslims, and of
Ah,
course they hate Palestinians.
Israel. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
talk about it tomorrow. Maybe I'll do a.
yeah, there's a lot going on over there. I need to catch up. Um, And so yeah, but Rana Ayub was yeah, she was arrested, and of course she got a ton of threats on social media. She was doxxed, and her house was raided by the Mumbai police. So
Mm,
yeah. So a lot of these journalists, who are progressive voices, who are, advocating against fascism, there a lot of these
silenced.
Hindutva nationalists will say, "You're the fascist. You're telling me that my Hindu nation cannot exist."
Right. It's
Bullshit.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they're Christian and Jewish Palestinians. And I'm trying to make, in fact, Sophie, back to sort of South Asian Christianity, a lot of South Asian Christians think that all Palestinians are Muslims. And I tell them there's Palestinian Christians. I'm like, well, that's great and all, but there's, but then they will still praise Israel for building settlements. It's really messed up. So I'm trying to get people to change their minds on that. In fact, I do, and this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you get on with the show. But I do. I'm trying to. I want to start doing it a couple times a month. But I'm doing this segment on my stream from time to time called Critical Faith Theory. Let's see what I did there. So basically,
Interesting.
it is for South Asian Christians, but anybody can come, even if you're not Christian, if you're Jewish, Muslim, atheist, all are welcome. People from all over the world are welcome. You know, but it is for South Asian Christians, and it is sort of a conversation to get them to, from a progressive point of view on certain issues. So, and particularly, you know, stuff I'm seeing within the Christian communities, both here and in India, you know, this sort of, you know, and their bias toward conservatism. This is sort of an antidote to all that. So, yeah, it is hard. It's an uphill climb, but it is. It means everything to me to, you know, to at least offer a different perspective. And even as a Christian, as somebody who is a follower of Jesus Christ, you know, I am very sort of progressive slash, you know, almost anarchist leaning in my faith. And you know, it is a very rare position, unfortunately, in the community. And yeah, I just hope to get people off these reactionary positions.
Yeah.
So in that community. And I think you do the same with what you're doing, you know, in Poland, which is very, very admirable. That's why I came on here again, because I really like what you do.
Hmm. Thank you.
So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it,
Thank you.
Lucy.
And I hope
I
to
Yeah.
speak to you again about India.
Yes, the next time I'll be on stream. Today I was just kind of, my schedule was all over the place, so I just hopped on. But next time I'll definitely stream it on my side, on the purple side as well, on Twitch. Yeah. But yeah, thank you everybody for having me. Thank you, Lucy. I'll hang out in chat for a bit while you talk, while you react to the
We're gonna
weird
have a
Polish
second
video.
guest. So the Polish video will be
Oh
the
wow.
third thing. We have a Clumsy24. We're gonna be doing a Vosh Bad video.
Yeah, and yeah, I mentioned at the beginning that I do have disagreements with Vosh, but again, it's more sort of it's specific things.
Yeah.
It's not like a personal attack. It's just specific little things about, like, you know, covering global politics and
It's
stuff.
always
Like
great.
I'd love to talk to him. Like I said, I'd love to talk to the guy about South Asia and sort of, and I hope he's open to the idea of giving a South Asian person a voice on his platform. So
I
yeah.
genuinely think he could be. He was open to
Hmm.
having me on.
No,
So
I'll probably pressure him, like, dude, you talked to Ro Khanna the other day with Emma, so yeah, give me a chance, bro. That's it. I'll
yes,
lead my email with that. I'll lead my email with that. Nah.
it is always great
But
to have you on. Yes, Karatsu is correct.
thank you, Karasu. I appreciate the love from everybody, also in both chats and the site and YouTube. His gaming takes are always bad. Okay.
Whose gaming takes mine?
Whoosh.
What's
The
Vosh's
Wouch's
take on
take.
Mortal Kombat?
You'll bully him for me. I gotta join his chat again sometime.
Yeah.
Media takes. I'm sort of indifferent
What
to
are
what he
the
says on the media.
Vosh's bad video games? Bad video game takes. What are his bad video game takes? Name one. Oh, see? Karasu couldn't help you. I might try to pitch you
Okay.
Boy Meets Me if I have reached just link some of the stuff you wish to show to him.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll get in touch with you, Karasu. I'll get in touch with you about this. So, see if we can get in touch with the see if we can get in touch with the with Demon Mama or Vosh. That'd be great.
There you already were on the Lucy Haza experience.
Yes.
Which Haza is chest in Hebrew.
Okay.
It's true. I've learned it 2 weeks ago. Also, it's a type of fish that can change its sex at will. I did not know
There you
I did
go.
not know these things before I chose this surname. I chose it at random, to be honest.
Yeah. So what that's a one that's it. It's what a coincidence, right? But it's a good one. But yeah, I'll let I don't want to keep Clumsy waiting, so I'll let them hop on. But yeah, thanks for having me, and I'll be back on again on the Lucy Aze. Am I saying that right? Aze
Chazé.
experience.
Chazé.
Chaze. Chaze, like challah bread, right?
Yeah, chazé.
Mm. Mm.
Like the
Chaze.
chest.
I see. All right. Well, hopefully, maybe next time I'll teach you all some more Urdu and Hindi, or Hindustani. No Hindi imposition, okay? um, all
See?
right. Well, see you around.
And now it's just us again. So let me turn. Oh, already calling without even a second to breathe. Mm.